Appreciate the patience, everybody. Right back into the game we go, and we're rejoining back over in the duo lane, Gore, where a lot of the pressure between Game 1 and Game 2 had started off. You've already seen Gino attempt some of his aggressive plays, and notably, Gore, I'm looking at the pivot away from inbound as well. If I'm just kind of scanning my eye from one support over to the other, I believe it was sprint both games in a row to start off for inbound. Remember, Ducky had sprint in the previous game as well. Now it's really a little bit maybe more defensive from both of them. Maybe a little bit more aware of some of the setup that United have, and also notably Cupid isn't around anymore for United.
Yeah, I mean, being able to avoid a lot of the slow fields that existed last game, and now you don't necessarily need it as much overall. Although, I will say, I don't know what trade I would take, having to buy Sprint to deal with Snoopy's Cupid, or having to deal with Snoopy's ROM just in general. That's not an easy task, all in all. And I think that's something that WoWie is going to have to put up with. But I will say this, Cupid has been very kind to Obey historically, even though WoWie has done maybe not so great win-loss on it. Performance-wise, he has always been able to do historically well with it. And that was kind of a discussion I think we've had in the past where, you know, WoWie is one of those players that will not lose you a game, but he can win you a game if, or he cannot win you a game depending on this. Even if he goes insanely well, I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done by the rest of the squad to make sure they, even if he goes, you know, let's say 10-2, someone else is winning this factor for them, for Obey.
Well, Gore, in the meantime, we get our first small glimpse of what both of the mid laners can do. Just a couple tiers of boots, tier 1 item, and Mage's Blessing online. Both of the junglers chunked to about half HP. Sino just sort of walked in. Scream attempted for a small gank over there into mid. Just shy of that level 5 mark. Now Scream makes his way over. So, Gore, the onus has maybe been on Scream in a lot of these games based on the picks that he's had. But just by reaching level 5 on Thor, now's the time, right? It's got to be for you to start to make an impact here across the map.
At least in burning some beads, right? I mean, there's 4 pairs of beads on the side of Obey. You gotta get rid of some of those, even if it costs you your ult. I think that's a big win because Scream still has the wall follow-up, and there's still a lot of damage that can come through. I think once Heroine's ult recharges here, that's going to be a pretty easy out for them. Good wombo combo combination of Smite that can come through. And even with beads, I think there's a lot of, well, just capability for United to find that damage combo, find a lot of lockdown to cause trouble for Obey altogether. I mean, Wolfie, even though he can maybe retaliate with a Kraken once his beads are gone, he doesn't necessarily have anything that gets him significantly far out of a fight except for a move speed stem that even still isn't going to be enough early on to really feel the difference. So there's a lot of ability, I think, to really just sit on this mid laner and cause Wolfie to have a bad game, much like they did on the Kukul Khan last game.
We saw a lot of this score as well in the last game. Some setup now onto Hurrywind. The healing, I think, does just enough to keep him alive. Wolfie on the chase, Wolfie on the kill. Hurrywind just eats way too much damage there, and it's only Wolfie who has to burn his ult. Scream. We've used the Anvil of Dawn as well, but didn't end up finding anyone for it. Now Snoopy realizes what it's like to be caught in a Fields of Love. Will have to use his beads to stay alive, but Hurrywind, the immobile Ra, falls for first blood.
Now, Dave, I do understand we have the glory of seeing literally everything. I mean, the god's eye view from looking down, I guess, even onto the gods themselves, right? Scream, when he used his ult, was up, I believe, near the XP camps and then dived with it down onto the red buff. So he was able to find something in there, you know, an invade for a steal on a buff. But you lose your own red buff at that, and there's 3 people that are just sitting there waiting for Heroine. I think it's just an unfortunate scenario. He was in a position where if Wolfie's under that tier 1 or just around it, even where he is now, he's in danger, and they're able to lock him down and find a kill. It's just, again, so unfortunate timing, I think, for United that Obey get aggressive when they do, and showcasing that Obey aren't, even though this team feels maybe a little more defensive, they're not locked under these towers just waiting for United to make the plays and for them to try and counter. They are willing to take the fight to United, and if United aren't prepared for it, well, that Kraken comes through and does just enough damage to get the job done.
It was an early 3 versus 3 grouping, or 3v3, I suppose, grouping. It wasn't really a 3 versus 3 fight. It was blue buff invade on one side of the map for United. Obey Alliance answer in kind with a red buff invade of their own. Now Scream, no Anvil of Dawn, but does have the ability to gap close. It's the blue buff respawning once again, which also means the red buff will be respawning for United once again. And it looks like both teams happy just to trade things out. Doesn't look like Scream actually stuck around and locked down that blue buff. I don't see the little green arrow there, so maybe just a little extra cautious really from both sides for the time being. Not going for the attempted invade once again.
And honestly, it's just because, again, so much matters on this game. Already, First Blood has been taken down. And so you have to be a little worried. I think if you're Obey here, you get First Blood. You don't want to slip up, but you don't want to overstep. I mean, that's what you did there in game number 1, where you had a good solid lead, and then you make a couple of missteps, some fumbles in the middle, and then finally you pull it back into your favor. I think here, what we're going to be looking at is just both of these teams playing a little more cautiously, slowly, and thus Scream can go up in the air like he has now.
Look at this, into the mid lane, could be Scream, stuns down, onto Inbound, and Gino will detonate Wolfie for the first kill of the fight. Inbound trying to work his way away, receiving a little bit of healing, and that's the combo we hope to see. Scream rooted down just for a moment, but it won't matter, and he spins to win, gets the kill onto Inbound at the end of it, and what a pluck from Gino to get Scream out alive for sure. A 2-kill swing for United.
Yeah, Wolfie is not going to get out of that on a good day. I mean, there's his bead's still up, so maybe he would have had the ability to try and pull out there. But otherwise, again, Poseidon doesn't have a leap, doesn't have a jump of any sort, nothing to get out of a fight when he's locked down like that. And he ate a Ra ult pre-Thor ult. I mean, I was talking earlier about the combo of the two. I wasn't thinking it would go in that order. I was thinking, yeah, Scream locks him down, Heroin hits the ult, and then they just have that damage. Otherwise, flipping the case for us, I think just showcasing what exactly Obey are going to have to suffer against, right? You can bring the fight to them, but if that Kraken isn't perfectly on the mark, and honestly, even early game, it's not going to have enough damage, then there's just enough of a shuffle there between the mid laners and junglers that early game advantage will shift always over towards the United, and Wolfie is going to have to be careful for it.
Yeah, one more small pause before we jump right back into game number 3. That's it, right? I mean, that is what you hope for. That's textbook from E United as far as set up and then knock down throughout the rest of that fight. There was a small kind of lagging response from Obey Alliance around the back end, but ultimately not able to turn around some of those kills. Quick look at the scoreboard, though, Gore. The team with the early lead has won up to this point. Obey Alliance, a small struggle to get there in game 1. But now E United, they're slowly starting to work their way there. We're 9 minutes into the game, 1 kill separating these two teams. But about 2,000 gold is the difference already.
And I was paused there for a little bit, but you had to notice that United, again, with the way things have kind of come up in their favor, they are able to spin this gold lead a little bit further. Maybe it's a mana potion, right, for Heroin. But right now, especially if he finishes this Doom War, that's a lot of power that's going to come through. He's already hitting you so ridiculously hard. I think one more fight, maybe a big objective like that in favor of United, would seal the deal, at least for Heroin, to keep doing it. Gold Fury going the other way, Dave. That will nullify all of the most advantages, at least, that we've talked about in the last little bit. Team fights can still definitely go the way of United. Oh,
the stun from Scream won't be there onto Inbound. The searing pain from Hurrywind sure will. But just tanky enough, and Inbound will stay alive. Just a moment ago, Gold Fury over to Obey Alliance. Hurrywind was kind of rotating over. I think Inbound doing a good job of dividing Hurrywind on his attempt to rotate in. Could have been a snipe for Kraken sort of trade there, a bit of a toss-up in moments like that. But won't be, and Obey Alliance will shrink that gold lead by about half. So good there for Obey for sure. Gore, I was about to shine some light onto Snoopy and the fact that he's gone Bloodforged, but I think it's Vote that we talked to. And he did this once, and he literally just said, I had enough gold for Bloodforged, so I bought it. Maybe that's literally what Snoopy's looking at here. I mean, provides you sustain, some damage. The extra shield is maybe the biggest differentiator. Scream differentiating in the mid lane. Oh, the Kraken! Look at the peel from Obey. Lurking in the waters is Gino. Is Inbound going to be able to get the kill there? He won't. It's the setup for Me United, but this time it's Obey Alliance that get the kill for themselves.
And that's just how you have to do it, right? Wolfie, you know, we have two examples of this now. Once where that Kraken is just off the mark and doesn't get anything really in return, and then once where it is smack dab in the middle of where Scream lands, and unfortunately for Scream, that means he goes down. And now Obey are pulling back these objectives. Still behind in gold, even if it's ever so slightly. It's still a deficit for them, but they're starting to pull a little bit back in their favor in terms of these objectives. But you have to be a little worried, right? I think Rod does a lot of damage in return. Whenever Herwind is in the neighborhood, you have to be a little worried about it. Same thing for Scream. And you had highlighted it, Snoopy's gone that Blood Forge. And while maybe there is a little bit of, I just have the gold for it, so I'll buy it. It's a good power spike. And he's already playing the best boxer in the game when it comes to the Hunter 1v1. So I think for Wowie, that just means that we're not going to be talking too much positively about him over there in the duo lane unless he finds some insane 1v1 where he's able to turn it around in his favor.
And look, I mean, Snoopy, the man's been playing, I think, lights out here over the last few weeks. Yes. Despite some of the woes that United has had, I think Snoopy has been playing pretty consistently well for this squad. A guy who in a lot of team fights will at least find one kill. I imagine, whether it's just I had money for it or not, we see that passive on the Blood Forge, the extra shielding on a kill, get used successfully a few times here in this game. I mean, I'm putting my money on Snoopy being heavily involved here in Game 3 as he has been up to this point. There's a double stun on the back end from inbound. A snipe again from Hurrywind connects, but again, inbound will stay alive. Scream, not happy with that though. He jumps down, but it's right into the waiting arms of Sino. The 9 turns Blessing, turns Scream, right back into the damage, and Wolfie drops the Whirlpool, drops the Kraken, drops Scream. Obey Alliance again have turned around the dive. Can Hurrywind get one? No, it's Snoopy instead, who now finds one for himself, maybe a second around to the corner. Inbound quick enough, turns around to get the minions, and Hurrywind will get the kill. He probably would have fallen thanks to the range nonetheless. This one keeps going as Ducky has suddenly rotated over. Vaskin's got the kill, but he's also died. The United have 3, Obey Alliance have 2, and that's the bottom line in this one.
And this goes back to what you had said, you know, fighting for the sake of fighting on that one. I think Sino is, like you had highlighted, maybe not so happy that they saw inbound go out, but that's a lot of investment. I mean, ultimately they get Wolfie and Wowie as well, but specifically into inbound, I mean, there felt like a lot of turnaround and maybe just pure hatred to try and lock down this Ardia. They do not want this pick to get off its legs. I think that late game healing as well, even though it's maybe not as much as you'll see out of the Raw on the other side, it's enough that you have to be a little worried about it. And so they're trying to shut this one down as fast and as much as possible. Same thing for Wolfie, but that one might just be ease of access. If you're looking at anyone on that team that's easy to kill, those two are the most immobile. Inbound still has a way to dash out, but it's not the fastest one in the game. So I think good for United. Locking them down, but ultimately, I mean, even though they come out with a kill lead, you can see like the gold fluctuating between this. Obey has closed that gap significantly from what that 2000 was earlier when we came back from the break, and now Oni Fury spawning up. Last time Obey got this for free. Herwind does his ult this time so he can contest it, but that Kraken, it's a lifesaver when it comes to these objectives. It's 3 games in a row that Wolfie has played something that is just solid at securing those for the team.
Goran, you know, I wonder if you sort of take a zoom out moment and just really look at both teams. I wonder how much of this is potentially frustrating for United, because they have been the ones, I'd argue, that have been doing all of the engaging, a lot of it thanks to Scream, a lot of the long-range sniping, and Obey Alliance, I think, have just done a better job of fighting back and away, baiting them in, not unlike this score. They're going to lurk Baskin around to the corner, and then a Kraken will eat him up a bunch of damage. It's a 9 turns Blessing this time from Sino, and the Kraken lurking far behind by the red buff. But United is going to try to find another re-engagement. This time the wall won't get the stun. Scream will have to back away. Obey Alliance do enough here to slow down the engage for the time being.
Well, it goes back to what you had mentioned earlier, and we might see here the aggression from United. It's getting turned on its head.
Oh, down comes Scream, but he hasn't connected, I don't think, with what he wanted. Hurrywind does not either. There's a double Kraken, a double stun, though, from Scream. Gets mitigated. It's a double kill from Baskin nonetheless. He'll ult his way right back towards the Fury. United this time, they're fighting over something, and it's the Oni Fury.
And this is a good one to get. 15 minutes in. Granted, this is about the time Obey should start going for a Fire Giant, right? They only have 15 seconds left if they want to keep that one going for themselves. But this is perfect. I mean, you already got a pretty significant lead in all of your lanes. A tower gone over there and right, halfway done through mid and left. And the waves are pushed up there already. So you get even more pressure from these Oni minions that are going to spawn with this next one. I think just causing more and more stress for Obey Alliance. Hey, they sneak back a Pyromancer, so there's something to keep them going. But as long as you can continue knocking down at least tier 1s right now, that's going to be a solid early lead for E United here at 16 minutes in. Then they can start converting that into the objectives, because look where all the kills are right now for Obey. Of the 4, 3 of them are on Wolfie, as well as 3 of the deaths on Wolfie. Right? He's pretty easy to solidify. It's all dependent on whether or not that Kraken turns things around.
And it seems like the Kraken has been hitting 2 people almost every single time. It's got to be a quick reaction thing where Wolfie kind of gets this sense that he's about to get dove on, and if you pre-fire that Kraken, it'll kind of slow down some of the engage from E United, and I think Wolfie has done a decent job of that. I mean, 3 kills for 3 deaths, I think, kind of tells that story. He tends to die, but he takes one with him on the back end of things, so it's about not getting dove on versus diving cleanly, I think, around the bend here for both of these teams. But E United's going to be in a little bit more of a comfortable spot in doing so. Quick look at the level differential. Everyone in this game outside of Geno has at least a 1-level lead. Baskin has quietly pulled way ahead of Ducky, a 2-level lead for this Achilles, 3-1 and 2. Baskin has been dominant here and much more impactful on the rotations out. Look out for Scream. Back behind the FG pit. Inbound has taken half of his HP. And now eats a stun. And now eats an execute as Baskin gets the kill. It's going to be a double. Baskin keeps doing it. He's going to re-engage on the FG. What a man move there with the execute from the Achilles. Obey Alliance. I don't think they have much they can say about it, Gore.
I mean, yeah, you're nowhere nearby. You have or don't have the Kraken at all. And, well, Sino, he's on the other side of the world, so you're not going to be able to do anything on this one. I'm going to say, you know, as much as we've been talking about Snoopy, because he's had a good game as well, 1-0-4, he's been a part of this. Baskin, you know, from game 1 to games 2 and 3, was night and day. I mean, he has been a huge portion of the last game, and pretty much the main portion of this game. I mean, he's part of 7 of the 9 kills. He's been finding the executes, the stuns, and a lot of these moments where it feels like Obey should be able to turn at least something around in the fight. He is the brick wall they run into that stops them from getting anything done. Now they're going to clean up all these towers, at least that tier 2 over there. They should be able to get a tier 2 in mid, maybe even the last one in left unless they want to pressure a Phoenix. And that's going to give them such a huge gold lead, finally, for someone here on E United. That will really make it difficult for Obey, who, again, already losing fights on the back end. I think they have a good Phoenix defense comp, but it's going to take a lot of work to get it done. And if Baskin keeps playing the way he does, they're going to have their work cut out.
Well, Obey Alliance just aren't here. It's Wolfie now being walked at by Baskin, and we've seen how that has worked out a few times throughout this game. A mid-lane Phoenix being taken by E United, a 9 turns blessing. But it's the ultimate from Baskin to disengage. A decent Fields of Love, and now a frenzy pop from Ducky. It might be Baskin falling yet again, but somehow he stays alive. And Ducky has eaten more damage than he bargained for. One more snipe from Snoopy. Hit it, baby. Down he goes. Kill not there, but Scream on the re-engage. E United working their way back into the Obey base. Snoopy gets his kill nonetheless. E United, Gore, they got 5 members with the FG. Obey Alliance, 3. They're back in defending. E United smell blood in the water. They want to end this game right here, right now. The minions working their way into the Titan room. But E United are playing this one slow. They want to heal up first.
They've got 2 minutes left with this Fire Giant, though. I mean, there's almost no pressure on them to fall back. They've got the sustain. Dave, they're going back in.
They're into the Titan room. Titan is at half HP. Sino is as well. Snoopy uses the Aegis, keeps himself alive. Titan aggroed onto Geno at the moment. Now Ducky has to juggle his own aggro. Scream is chased down. Sino off to the left. E United working their way in. Do they have enough damage to do it? I think they might, Gore. There's some stuns on the back line, but the damage from E United way too much. In 20 minutes, E United take game 3.
Yeah, that one felt like they knew what they were doing coming into it, and they just locked up Obey. Again, it feels like from minute 1 there was a lot of back and forth from them, But except for some good Krakens from Wolfie, there wasn't really a lot that came up in favor of Obey. I guess they got a Gold Fury here or there that they were able to pull in their favor, but not a lot. I think that really helped convince anyone they were going to win team fights. Overall, I think post-game stats, like things to look at Heroine's damage and then look at what Baskin was able to do, because I think his KDA, as well as the raw damage that came through at both RA and RAW that came through for E United there, was just enough to overwhelm them. And again, Baskin, at least for Game 3, was easily MVP.
This one, Corey, it's so weird. It felt close, like, through the first 10 minutes of each of these games, and then almost not throughout the last 10, where one team just started to run away with things. And it was just one siege for a while there. We were seeing teams have trouble ending games. Not today. Really one push, all that was required in a couple of these to finish things off. E United in this very important matchup will break their loss streak, take the set 2-1 over Obey. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, the guys on the desk will break down the set.
We get some moments of brilliance, and I mean some moments of brilliance from Obey, but they cannot chain them together. And in the end, E United come out the winners here 2-1. And what a last game that was. E United kind of just stacking it up, winning in a hurry there towards the tail end. A 20-minute game or so to close that one out, almost unheard of. But it is indeed E United your winners 2-1 here at the end. And Aggro, if you had something, I guess, to say here to Obey, you know, about finding a way to chain these good moments together, I mean, what would it be? Do you have a diagnosis for this? How are they struggling to completely get the whole package?
Unfortunately, I'm still working on the doctorate here. I don't have a true diagnosis for this E United, or for this Obey team rather, but I think that they've got to find a way to get themselves in positions where they are going to be a little bit more comfortable. For whatever reason, Sino, who really was the initiator of Erlong this year, was the one showing off on it at the very beginning of the phase, has not looked comfortable on it these last two games. He was just on a different page than the other members of Obey in this one, and when that happens, I just don't think Obey really can stand up to anybody, because that is such a big part of their success, is them all working on the same page together following Sino's leadership. But you got to give credit to E United. I thought that they made it very hard for Obey to be on the same page in this game. Gino was really, really strong on this Sobek, but just in general, the mid 3v3 for E United was strong enough. And then Baskin just rotated out of solo and was way more impactful than what Ducky was able to do in this game. That's back-to-back games here where Baskin did the stuff that I expect Baskin to be doing. And if that's the biggest change for E United, if that's going to be a lasting thing for them, then they're going to be in a really contentious spot come placements time. I mean, if Baskin can return back to form, I think E United's going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think Baskin played well in this one. Whirlwind as well was hitting all these snipes, some on the tail end of engagement, on members chasing out right there in the middle of it. I was a bit worried about this Raw at the top of that draft order with the way those bans went, but I think Whirlwind assuaged those fears for me quite well. This United team, when they're playing the way that they are, as you sort of said, they're going to be a really hard team to beat. And speaking of United, after winning the game, of course, they will be the one standing by for the post-game interview.
That's right, and it's Scream with me, fresh off a 2-1 win over Obey. Scream, you know, if I'm going to ask kind of a sad question, it's going to start at the beginning. You know, game one, it's very back and forth between you guys and Obey here in this one. Do you guys as a team feel like maybe you could have ended this 1-2? Do you think game one might have slipped away from you and you could have gotten the 2-0?
Yeah, I think they came in with a game plan that we didn't really expect. Like, they played a really heavy objective burn, and in specific, the ISIS last pick was kind of, I mean, well, okay, when I pick Fenrir and they haven't picked their mid laner yet, it's kind of risky, but they last pick ISIS, which is like really terrible for me, and I got behind early game as well, so it was just kind of like a culmination of like a lot of bad things that happened, but we like team fought back into the game, and we probably could have won, but it was just kind of a tragic game from the get-go, honestly.
Well, that's the sad. The good is that you guys win games 2 and 3 and get the win here regardless of what happens there in game 1. You specifically, 3 different picks here in this one. Fenrir, as you pointed out, Bastet, Thor as well. You've really been playing a variety of picks over the last few sets. Do you think jungle's in a pretty flexible spot at the moment where a good variety of picks can work?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say I play a relatively different god pool than most other people do.
Definitely.
But I think you can kind of play whatever you want. Like, you see Sino, he's playing like these like auto attackers, and he's going stone cutting executioner. There's other people like, I don't know. There's a few other picks, like Fred plays a little bit of different things that we'll have to deal with tomorrow. And I don't know. I just think it's pretty flexible. Like, there are some characters that are just like not very great, but I think like a good majority of the cast is like pretty fun, and you can kind of play whatever you want.
Definitely, you guys can kind of game plan around those types of picks as well. Talk to me a little bit about Baskin as well. I mean, you guys really put him on the Cerberus early on. He started to come into his own here. His Achilles there in game 3 was massive. How pivotal do you think Baskin has been, specifically in this set, to getting you guys that win?
For this set, I think he played great. I think him and Gino were like really going off in the front line. And it allowed us to get these wins. But Baskin overall, he's been great. He brings a lot to practice every day. He wants us to practice what he thinks is good, and usually in general, like he has a good idea of what is good, and he just brings kind of like consistency to our practice where we didn't really have that before. So.
Sure. Well, good looks for you guys here today, Scream. As you mentioned, up against PK in a set tomorrow. 3 sets left for E United here in Phase 2 of the SPL. Best of luck in all 3 of those. Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen at home, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we got another set.
got it so bad. I got it bad for you. You give me good love. You like a dream come true. They say it won't last. They say you're wild and free. I know you never were a one-man woman. I was hoping you would give that all up for me. I get so confused. I love it when it's only me and you, doing all the things we know we shouldn't do. This is way too good, it can't be true. So tell me what your game is, girl. When you touch me, feel so good.
Yet to see the meaning of cruel.
Let the heavens rage!
Well, welcome back to the SPL, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, we're all about teaching Ramsey life lessons early on here. So I'm going to ask her a few questions. She's going to pick the hand, and we're going to determine if she's a smart dog or not. No trickery at play here. So, Ramsey, pick this hand if mid lane is better. Pick the other hand if jungle is better. No? Look at that. She's already got mid lane here, guys. All right, so that's a big win already there. All right, Ramsey. All right, let's sit up here. Now, you tell me... which role is more impactful, mid lane or jungle? This hand for mid lane, the other hand for jungle. Oh, she's 2 for 2 already. All right, Ramsey, third and final question here. I want you to pick. No, there's food on the table. You can't pay attention to that. This is not rehearsed. Pick this hand if Maxonomic is the right option. Pick the other hand if the stool, a crappy stool is the right option. Oh my, it's overwhelming, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. Ramsey, 3 for 3. On all of the options, and now I've officially run out of food, so I've lost all control of everything going on over here. Maxonomic, our chair sponsor here at the SPO, and Ramsey's personal choice. Remember, if you're saying no to Maxonomic, you're saying no to Ramsey, and that can't fly. Needforseat.com, and you also get a ward chair when you go online, or a chair ward rather, when you go online and make your Maxnomic purchase now. So be sure to do that. Back to me and Aggro, though. No more puppies, so unfortunate for all of us.
What's the
but
point?
Aggro, I don't know. What's the point anymore? Aggro, we had a 2-1 set. I got to recompose myself. We had a 2-1 set there for United over Obey. But now we've got a good one between Radiance and the Renegades. Kind of like the two teams earlier on today. Two teams trying to build some momentum moving into the final few sets here in Phase 2.
Critical set, again, I mean, they all feel really critical because they are when you only have a week and a half to go, basically, at this point. But the key now is that because E United won against Obey and E United are playing the Renegades next week, the Renegades can really find themselves in a bad spot if they lose this set and then against E United. Now, if the Renegades can win right here, they would make it so that E United would have to not only beat them head-to-head next week, but then also beat Space Station next week, which is a tough task for any team, let alone a team like E United that has been very inconsistent. So this is a key set for the Renegades. If they can find the win, then they put E United in a spot where it's pretty tough for them to get into 6th seed.
Well, admittedly, Aggro, despite what Ramsey and, maybe fate tells us, jungle has been a very important role, if not maybe the most important here over recent weeks in the SPL. So let's start with Radiance, and with that, let's start with Adapting. Admittedly, some ups and downs for him over his last few sets. What are expectations? Where is he on the hot-cold meter in your eyes, and how important is he for Radiance in getting a win today?
Critical. Every set is determined in large part by jungle. That's the way SMITE has always worked and will always work. Though, of course, mid laners are way cooler and everything like that. So Ramsey was still right. Don't be concerned, anybody. But Adapting has really been going to the Tsukuyomi a whole lot. Is he going to prioritize that very heavily in these drafts alongside a Morrigan pick for BMT? Are they going to switch up their unique drafting style that we saw from them last week? All of that kind of remains to be seen, but if Adapting's not playing well, it's going to be hard, if not impossible, for Radiance to win because this team is built with Adapting doing well in mind. That, of course it is. I mean, this guy is the best player to ever touch SMITE, at least when it comes to his resume. I think you've got to give him that credit, and you've got to expect a lot from this guy, and maybe a bit unfair to him, but that's the way it is when you're one of the GOATs. Everyone's going to expect that from you every week.
Agreed. It's that conversation, I know, around we expect this from you. If you're not meeting that, obviously we're a little more harsh, all that sort of fun stuff. I'm glad you bring up the Tsukuyomi. It had been 3 straight games prior to Thor Susano in Circuit in his last 3 games, so definitely something teams starting to game plan around a little bit. Let's look over at the Renegades, Aggro, and what we need to see out of them. Lasbra as well. Maybe similar vibes. I know, not my chord, Ramsey. I know we're talking about junglers, and we're not happy about it, but we have to get there. We have to get it done. Lasbra for the Renegades, maybe very similar vein to what we're talking about here with Adapting, in that we've seen the good from Lasbra, and it tends to be very good for the Renegades as well.
Got to see Lasbra step up in a set like this. Again, a near must-win for the Renegades. You have to put yourself in a position to get the 6th seed, and this is one of the easiest ways to do it outside of beating United in the head-to-head next week. And Lasbra has had some really good sets for sure. When he gets a lead, he seems to really push those leads better than most. Has a really good idea of how to play the map from ahead. But his problem, all since last year even, when he moved back into jungle after starting in mid lane in order to off-roll for that old squad, has always been playing from behind. Can he find a way to be impactful when it isn't easy to be impactful when you're ahead?
Right.
And that has been the struggle for him. He hasn't proven it to me yet this year, I don't think. I would expect him to try and step up and be that impact player in the early to mid game, because when he hasn't, he's really had trouble finding those late game impacts consistently.
Yeah, and to continue that Tsukuyomi conversation, 3 out of the last 6 for Adapting have been Tsukuyomi, 2 out of the last 6 have been Tsukuyomi for Lasbra, so definitely a pick, whether it's in bans or in the pick phase. I think we'll see contested in that jungle role here today. We've talked about adapting. We've talked about Lasbra. We also talked to Lasbra. Let's hear what the jungler's thinking going into this set against Radiance.
Well, we're here with Lasbra from the Renegades, and, while we have a big matchup, I think, about Radiance coming up, first I want to ask, you've only got a few sets left so far, in the phase, so things have been pretty hit or miss so far. Sometimes you come in and it looks like a completely different team than what we've seen last week. Sometimes good, sometimes maybe not so much. So how's the vibe going into these last few sets?
Overall it's pretty good. Obviously they're very important, especially the United set, because we're fighting for the 6th seed. Into Radiance, it's going pretty good. We've been trying to figure out some new stuff.
Yeah, that's actually the interesting thing. Last time y'all played Radiance, you actually beat them, so you're 1-1 as it is right now. What do you think about how they've been playing lately? Like, do you think you still have that opportunity to take another dub here?
Oh yeah, for sure. We can't expect, and we don't necessarily know what they're gonna play, but we can't expect them to have a few picks, and we have pretty good picks into that. We might ban away some of their specific picks to have, so we're kind of ready for them, yeah.
Now, this is a question, I realized when I was writing it that it probably doesn't phase you as much anymore, but you're going up against adapting in the jungle. I don't know, is there, any pressure when you see adapting, knowing that he's a 2-time world champion? Is there any pressure in the jungle when you go into the lobby, or has it just kind of phased away at this point?
Adapting is really good, no disrespect to him, but I don't think that I'm looking at players that much. I'm more looking at the team as a whole. And definitely a raw adapting when it comes to playing the map and pressure and all that. They're doing that very well, so I definitely feel something when I'm playing into Radiance, for sure.
Focused on the matchup, not necessarily the names that you're going up against. Well, it sounds like you guys have a lot of planning. I want to ask, though, for you in the jungle, there's been a lot of picks specifically for you that have been, maybe target banned. The Ratatoskr has been starting to get stripped away. Do you have anything, flavorful or any way to maybe adapt to that's going into this set to maybe help give you the edge?
I have a few picks that are... they're not new. I'm just kind of going with what I'm usually playing, I think. Not anything, specific or... flavorful, really.
Well, either way, it sounds like it's going to be a good time. I'm excited to watch the jungle matchup, but I'm sure everybody at this point is excited to just watch this matchup in general, so we'll go ahead and get to it. Thanks for your time, man, and good luck in your games.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
And as much as we've compared these two guys in the jungle, Lasbra and Adapting, their stats have been somewhat comparable so far here in Phase 2. It's 13 more kills for Adapting, 13 more assists for Adapting, but 6 more deaths, so take that how you will in the numbers game, but grand scheme of things, these guys have definitely been close in their role, and it's going to be very important, I think, in the matchup that we see there. Aggro, final thoughts before we jump into picks and bans. How do you like the mid lane matchup here in this one? Do you see any contested picks between the two?
Both these mid laners have shown that they're willing to have pretty wide god pools, so in situations like that, I don't really worry too much about overlap. When they're both willing to play a bunch of different things, there's naturally going to be a little bit of overlap, but recently it's been the Morrigan for Big Man Tings, it's been the big pick for him. They both have shown a willingness to play Persephone a whole lot. I'm interested to see what kind of style both of them are going to go for, because I think both of these mid laners really just determine what they're going to play based on what their team wants to do.
Agreed. I think Discordia has been important for BMT as well, but let's delay no further. Picks and bans for Game 1 between Radiance and Renegades will join us now. Persephone definitely going to be important here, Aggro, and me getting a bully stick down to my dog will also be important. I was telling you guys during that interview, I gave her half a handful of food, so she's not happy that she hasn't received the rest of her dinner yet, but we'll get to that very shortly here. Erlang Shen, though, first banned out. Not surprising. What did we see? It was a 75% win rate on this god or something in our first set of the day, at least. It started to transcend even away from, just the Cheerios of the league. This guy, against most junglers, needs to be banned, I suppose.
Interesting. Radiance really taking double shots at Lasbra right away with Erlang Shen and Ratatoskr bans right away. If you're going to take out the other one that he plays a lot, it's Pele. I don't think that's one that needs to be banned that early, though I don't really think Rat needs to be banned this early either. This is just going to change Renegade's strategy of when they're picking Lasbra's god, if I had to guess. But with Renegade's bans, there's a lot left open. Persephone is available. Amaterasu, though we're seeing teams start to trend away from picking her early on. Renegade's clearly trying to keep Radiance off of some of those picks that they've really favored recently, and less so about what the overall meta is right now, and thus Cyclone Spin gets one of his signature picks in the ROM.
Yeah, ROM has been good for him. 9-4-14, 8-5-12 the last 2 times that Cyclone Spin has played this god. 1 a loss, 1 a win, both of them against Obey. How about this, though? The answer back, the Guan Yu. We've seen it in support a little bit aggro. But you got to remember, Variety out of the solo lane here for this Renegades team has loved this pick. I mean, he might have been one of the first guys to kind of start playing this pick here over the recent weeks. So I think makes some sense that the Renegades lock him in.
And especially up against Radiance, because they are the team that does put Guan Yu in support, and they usually top 3 that god. But you're noticing a lack of Hercules bans here from the Renegades.
Yeah.
That's an option here for Aurora in this one, if that's the direction he wants to go. And with the Guan Yu taken already by Renegades, I'd be pretty surprised if Aurora doesn't go to it. It's really been Hercules, then Guan Yu, then everything else in terms of his prioritization as of late. I think Radiance would be wise to pick him up, pick Aurora up, one of his signature picks while they still can.
And how about the rise of Nike as well? As much as we've talked about, you know, Guan Yu becoming important, Persephone makes her way through here, sort of middling in that priority chart, still very strong for Venenu nonetheless. Nike is in that category as well, so a Nike-Hercules pairing for Radiance going into that second turn of bans, that's a lot of front line that the Renegades are going to have to deal with, and aggro a good bit of setup as well.
I like what Radiance has so far, for sure. I mean, Adapting is going to have to find something that he can be very impactful on. That's been really the metric for Radiance recently, is can Adapting get one of those gods that he's been very, very comfortable on lately. But Big Man, I'm not worried about his god pool whatsoever. He's been able to look impactful enough on enough different selections that I'm not worried about 2 bans really taking him out of this one. And 2 bans are likely not enough for Adapting either, but he just hasn't seemed to find a way to pick one of those priority gods every single time. And with both teams likely banning out junglers here, it's going to really limit the god pool. Renegades take away Thor, Radiance take away Serket. Ra's the ban for Renegades here. I thought that might be a Raven ban, because that's been one of the ones that Adapting has gone to pretty consistently. But this lets Radiance, I think you ban Pele, even though Lasmer hasn't played it a lot recently. Feel like that's the pick that I would expect the most out of him. Maybe they feel like he's getting a lot of Fenrir practice in, but I don't know. I think that you take away the god that you know he might play, not the shot in the dark assassin that you assume he might have in the pocket.
Well, Lasmer definitely talked about, obviously we're talking about Radiance's ban here in the Fenrir, but these 2 teams familiar with some new strategies, maybe one another are starting to swing. Fenrir could fall into that category. Scream obviously played him out of the jungle in our previous set, so something that maybe Radiance are mindful of. The Discordia continues to be impressive for Big Man Tings. 3 games played so far, I'd argue, if not all 3, 2 out of 3 have been for BMT, and he's looked good on them. 1, 2 out of 3 of those games she has here. In Phase 2, Heimdall makes his way through for Barracuda. We're starting to see, you know, some of these niche picks in a good way for Radiance, specifically the Discordia. Maybe not so much the Nemesis. I think it'll be good for Adapting. But I have high hopes for BMT on Disco here out of the mid.
Agreed. We should really start considering BMT's Disco one of those specialty picks that we aren't going to see a whole lot from other players. Like Hera used to be for Dardes, where Dardes was the only one playing her, but looking good on her every single game, to the point where you have to start considering banning or picking around it. I think that this Discordia pick has been that good for BMT. I'm always impressed with how he pilots this pick. Now, I think the Radiant should be pretty happy with the draft they've come out with. I think they've got enough CC, enough displacement, great damage coming out of this draft. I think Radiants are in a really good spot.
We haven't really gotten a chance to dive all that in depth on the Renegades draft. They get Persephone, Hunbats at a 71% win rate. Wow. And Heimdall as well. You think they come out strong on this draft phase just the same as Radiants do?
I think it's a lot of pressure on Ven in this game. And Ven has been playing really, really well lately, so that's not a bad spot to be in if you're a Renegades fan, but I think Radiant's got a little bit too much of what they like this time around.
Radiant versus Renegades. Game number 1. Finch and Mifflin will take us in.
Thank you, Dolson. Indeed, Finch, Mifflin, and Doug here, bringing us the views and moving to game number 1 here. Make sure you're voting in chat to let us know who you think will win this one. As I got Mifflin here with me, Miff, we saw a Fenrir band coming out here in this one, and yet we're still seeing a lot of comfort picks coming through for these teams. The big one, though, I think to talk about, Big Man Tings on this Discordia, one of the only ones playing this pick, but I think gotten some good value out of it. Do you like it here for him?
I like Discordia almost in general as a blanket safe pick. I think she's got a certain degree of safety, just having that erratic magic, the ability to poke from a range. That golden apple is one of the best disruption tools in the late game in these team fights where it's so nearly impossible to escape out of the secondary burst if you're doing it around the Gold Fury or even the Fire Giant. Big Man Tings plays this god incredibly well, one of the best to have ever done it. And against this composition in particular, I think it can work out pretty well. Variety's going to have a hard time sticking to the Discordia if Cavalry charges down. Jake is going to have a hard time finding a good pluck opportunity as well. I think that Discordia really does work out here.
Should be able to work for them well. Strife, one of those better tools in ranged engage, ranged CC. Certainly add in some value here for Big Man Tings. These teams, though, coming in at kind of different points in their path right now. Radiance were struggling for a while, but they're coming off 2 wins in a row. Looks like chat, though, don't think it's quite that easy. Only 59 to 41% there in those vote polls. But Radiance coming off a couple of wins leading into this. Meanwhile, Renegades have struggled here lately. It's Radiance trying to maintain their spot in the top 4 here up against Renegades and seeing if they can do it. And Adapting is on this Nemesis pick that he has liked. Aurora is on Hercules. I mean, I considered this something you perma-banned from him, considering the name that he's made on this pick, and yet he's been allowed to pilot it here. Cyclone's been on one of the best hunters in the game here as well. I think Radiant are in a great position to make this one work, even though Renegades have some strong picks of their own in this Persephone for Ven. It's just that he has to make up for some insane value that's been given over to Radiant, in particularly in the duo lane.
Yeah, this duo lane from Radiance is so strong, the Rom and the Hercules. It's almost a vintage draft for Radiance. When I say vintage, I mean beginning of Phase 2 or tail end of Phase 1, where they were playing this more strategic, just generally standard Smite comp with Aurora on this physical, very aggressive-centric support, BMT on a standard mage, adapting, playing the meta out of the jungle. It just all kind of feels familiar, which is weird to say because it's been a while since we've seen them play this more standard draft. But I think Renegades come out with something that's going to work out very well for them. The sentiment around Renegades is that they look best when Lazra is playing well, and I think Hunbots has really become this pick for Lazra where he can consistently perform very well on it. He's impressed me time and time again with his ability to engage these fights with Fear No Evil or to use the Sacred Monkey Toss incredibly well. As Cyclone Spin in a bit of a tricky spot here. If he gets plucked, he won't. He would have lost his life though.
Well timed on that roll from him, managed to avoid the aggression coming out from Jake. And Jake Sobek, I think, one of his signature picks. I think it's a fun conversation, some of these signature picks from these pros, you know, and what they might be. Lasbra, I think of that Pele a lot with him, not what he's piloting this time. But Jake, there are a lot of concerns around him coming into the league, Myth, with his ranked style, you know, of just unfettered aggression work here at the SPL. He didn't completely come in with that same style. It's an abridged version of that, but I think occasionally he lets that out. Occasionally he's doing some odd stuff over here that no one else does, but he's also shown he's perfectly capable of doing some of the more standard stuff too, and I think this Sobek is a great marriage of those two ideas. He's able to be a little bit more aggressive when the time comes, but plenty of tools in the kit for him to play a more traditional backline peel as well.
And he's been kind of veering away from those picks that we consider the 408 Midnight Ranked Q special, right? We're not seeing the Osiris supports too much anymore, the tier supports as much. He's really kind of become a student of the meta as the year goes on, and it's really shown as growth individually through this player. Maybe it's him just working with Barracuda and finding out what works over there, but I think that 408 in particular is one of the players who's up there for one of the most improved throughout the year, and I am impressed, pretty generally impressed by his level of play. It's very seldom that you get to say, okay, well the problem that match was Jake, he messed this up or he messed that up. I think that he's become this kind of paragon of consistency for his team, and he's looking very good, particularly on picks like Sobek or Ymir, where he's able to marry those two styles, as you said earlier, of this more orthodox support god pool with this aggressive playstyle that we know he wants to play.
It's really worked for them. I think Renegades are one of those teams. I know that they're like, what, 6th right now in the standings, just barely out of that bottom 2. But I think they're a little stronger than what that might reveal, their record might say about them. This is the team that is right there at the cusp of where you've got to make sure you're 100% ready, or this team will take the set off you and they won't think twice about it, man. They have really improved here lately. Some of that credit I give to Ro as well, the coach here for this squad, talking to this team and keeping them locked in. They know what they want to do, but sometimes they need that outside perspective. As adapting, considering, invading, certainly too late for that. A little bit of damage goes Variety's way. And he falls back. Myth, is this one of the games where you're okay with both of these teams maybe having a bit of a slower approach? It's only 5 minutes in, but do you think either one necessarily needs to maybe try and step on the gas pedal a little sooner?
No, I don't think either team really needs to. I mean, the Hercules pick could be one that falls off a little bit come late game, having it be hard to dedicate into the push, and he finds a nice driving strike there.
Little Evil was the response, and Lasper is in trouble. Tings, though, not gonna miss with that Apple of Discord. That sets up 1 kill. Benji gets the second, and here's the Radiance we remember from Phase 1, dropping the Sentinel of Zeus, and Benji getting the double, involved early with this Nike pick and making it hurt.
Man, and Aurora making sure that nothing goes the way of Renegades. Lazarus commits so much to trying to escape out of that situation. The Fear No Evil in pure fear, trying to make sure he gets out of there alive, and not quite enough as the rest of Radiance collapses in there. Fantastic rotation from Benji. Confirms 2 kills for him as well. And a Nike who's coming online early is a pretty bad sign for the Renegades. You get that passive up a little bit more quickly. You're going to get to that point in the game where you become this mid-game backline powerhouse as you're able to dive all on your own and almost single-handedly force Renegades to at least dedicate 1 relic slot to the Sunder if Benji gets off to an even better start. We've seen recently, though, some of these SPL teams are a little bit less willing to pick up the Ankh or the Sunder just because of the Nike pick. Maybe you want an additional Shell or a Heavenly or something along those lines. It'll be interesting to see how Renegades decide to play it.
Yeah, I think we talked to Yarkor after one of his Nike games, and he said it's kind of a win-win as Aurora and Jake are in battle. Charge Prey lands. Aurora in a lot of trouble here, and I think the Renegades are going to make him pay. Good use of the Sacred Monkey, and Aurora will drop. But it was Yarkor who said when you're Nike, it's win-win, Myth, because either they buy Sunder, and that's 1 less relic slot that can punish your backline like a Blink or something like that, or they don't punish it, and now you're Nike doing whatever you want to because you've got the Sentinel of Zeus shield that no one can shoot through. I think it oftentimes is a win-win as Lasbra looking for a gank here in left. This active Unbots is causing trouble for Radiance. Barracuda now using the Bifrost to flank Cyclone, leave him with no options, and he will fall. Good active here from Lasbra these last 2 fights.
It is. Lazarus has been getting all over the map wherever his team needs him. Setting up for that kill is huge as well. Cyclone Spin actually dedicates the beads there. Looked like he wanted to roll in once we saw Barracuda use the Bifrost to see if maybe he could land 1 or 2 more auto attacks to set up for that ultimate kill. Eventually realizes, okay, Barracuda's not stepping up anymore. Shifts his attention to Lazra. No way he wins that engagement. And now he's got to play very cautiously in the future. Lazra can rotate back through and find another kill with Fear No Evil, or Barracuda can just try again with the ultimate and try and solo him out himself. Cyclone Spin in a pretty precarious situation for the next 2 minutes.
Gonna have to make sure that he's being careful over there on the left-hand side. Does still have the ultimate, but without the purification beads, he is in a bit of trouble. Look at Benji, though, flexing the lead over there in solo. He's level 10 to the level 8 of Variety. A brutal swing for that one. But I think Lasbra's activity, getting the pick onto Aurora, then coming over to Cyclone Spin and left, has helped him as Aurora gobbles up Awesome Jake. He makes it look so easy, Mip, to just push-pull.
Yeah, he just walked in. It's like, oh, you're in my range? Maybe meet the rest of my team. This is why you don't let Aurora play this pick. I know it's been a couple weeks since we've seen him playing this aggressive style. He's been playing the Guan Yu a little bit more, occasionally the Terra, and it seems like maybe people forgot that he is an absolute beast. When you think of the best Herculeses in the league, Aurora's name is right up there with PBM because he's able to do exactly just that. And Awesome Jake, unfortunately, on the receiving end this time, couldn't even get the ultimate off for the CC immunity. Just falls way too quickly once adapting dedicates his ultimate as well. Clean play from Aurora.
And that's kind of the crux of this combo as Aurora and Benji are aggressively looking for a blue buff invade, but Renegades are here for the defense. The leap in from Benji but it's Aurora who ends up falling. Great use of the Fear No Evil there, and Renegades will find the defense around the blue buff, but maybe they won't. I think Benji just stole it 1v3, and now Adapting is here to even up these numbers. Good dash, gets him away from trouble. Variety still landed the stun as Lazarus Blink gets him away from Nike. Now Adapting's in trouble. Maybe not such a great fight here for Radiance after all, as Renegades find the defense. Lazarus is on the wrong side of town, but he has all day to run away.
He does, and the boys are there to back him up. Big Man Tings get plucked in. Grasp of Death finds its way home. The Nanu takes the kill.
That's absolutely brutal now for Radiance. They move in 2v3 for the buff invade, lose the fight, and now it's a 3-for-0 in the other direction. Miff, that is back-breaking for the Radiance boys.
Yeah, now Adapting's got a pretty steep hill to climb back up if he wants to be as relevant as Lasbra coming into the mid-game. A little bit overcommitment from the Nemesis, trying to use the Blink to get behind the Tier 1 tower to finish off a kill. Lazra playing nearly perfectly to kite around the entirety of Radiance and set up for the rest of his team to rotate in. Ben and Awesome Jake playing around their homie. Doesn't leave him high and dry, never leave your boy behind. Jungler makes it out alive, and the rest of Radiance kind of fall behind him. That's a huge swing for Renegades, but it doesn't put them in the lead necessarily. Maybe a slight XP lead in the jungle, but for the most part, Radiance has the gold still in their favor ever so slightly. A couple of XP leads throughout the map as well. Still 2 levels for Benji. Renegades do a little bit to claw it back, but they haven't established a lead.
And I know every team is reliant on their jungle, Myth. As much as we like to joke, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about the fact that jungle is the most important role, but I think Renegades, more than anyone else, needs their jungler to play well or they cannot win. Maybe make an argument for Obey and their reliance on Sino, but Renegades are right there with them, man. When Lasbra has a good game, Renegades looks like a different team. He's been active everywhere. He's helped set up the pick onto Aurora. He gets that kill on the Cyclone spin, has a good fight over near the blue buff, and just like that, Renegades are back in this one. They're going to need him to keep playing like this as Benji is way up on the wrong side of the map. Meanwhile, there's also a 2v2 skirmish happening on the left side jungle. Benji gets away. Aurora, I think, has got a trip through Niflheim, and he shall crash back down to Earth. Good driving strike and Jake on the wrong side of the map. But just Cyclone Spin here for damage. Charge Prey means Jake escapes, but Adapting not done yet. Slice and dice off the mark, and Renegades make it out of that one pretty easy.
Yeah, I agree with your point, though, about Lazra, and I think that's why situations like this, where even though Lazra is having a very good game, Renegades are still struggling, those are the types of games that weigh very heavily on the minds of some players. Like, I did the most that I could. If I'm the win condition, why is it not working out as of yet? And that's not to say that Renegades aren't in this. They absolutely are. But I think we're going to need to see even more from Lazra so far, because the leads that Radiance have established are pretty hefty. Already we're seeing Benji throwing his weight around the map, invading the speed buffer, at least attempting to alone, or going into the back camps, and 3 members of Renegades respond and can't do anything about it. Instead, I'd like to see Lazra and the rest of the Renegades try and put a little bit more focus on this duo side of the map.
Variety out-rotating Benji this time, and Aurora the one that gets punished. And they were thinking about this red buff invade. Not going to be able to move in time to do that. As instead, the red buff still already dropped, I believe, by Radiance. We just saw Lazarus running over it. Benji now in a little bit of a skirmish here for Variety. He has now finally showed up, but I like this. Renegades know they've got all 5 members here, and Aurora down for a moment. They start up this Gold Fury, and now we're doing Radiance to make it defend, but the pluck right into the Fear No Evil, a little too good. That will be it for Adapting as well. Cyclone Spin snipes on enough for the kill on the Lasbra. Teams being hunted by Variety. Who cares not for the Tier 2? Another pick going over to Renegades. What a fight through these first 13 minutes from the Renegades boys. And they want Cyclone Spin as well. The dash allows him to reposition, but Variety is a menace. Looks like the Terminator hunting relentlessly, and Radiance can't get away.
Man, Variety tears through the back line of Radiance. No one peeling for each other. You got to take separate one-on-one engagements every single step of the way. He works his way through Big Man Ting, says who's next. Jake already burned the beads off a Cyclone Spin. Might as well go there. Rotates through. And fantastic awareness from Jake to realize he knows if he goes for the pluck, it's likely going to get beads out. And he's got about 4 or 5 seconds where he's going to be left alone with Cyclone Spin. He knows that he's going to be able to survive that encounter until Variety gets there. Well played from the Renegades as well to just shift their attention. They initially wanted the Gold Fury, but the second Jake spots out a pluck, it's time to hit the jets. They hit the gas pedal and immediately engage for the fight. Renegades are playing very decisively right now, and I'm loving seeing it.
It was this decisive rotation, right? Remember, Variety gets to mid, way ahead of Benji, and Aurora with the driving strike does pin him, but it leaves you with no mobility right at the edge of tower, and Aurora then dies first. And then they start getting the picks. Remember the pluck from Jake? That brings them into the Fear No Evil. Lasper drops it instantly, Adapting's out. Then as you covered, the picks on the Cyclone Spin and Tings. This is its decisive play with a clear game plan from the beginning. But fans of Barracuda squads know that oftentimes it's not the beginning of the game that they need to go well. They often look good at this stage. It's around the 20-21 minute mark when those late game decisions start coming up where Renegades oftentimes can struggle. Radiant's just got to stick nearby and maybe see if they can capitalize on one of those known Renegades' weaknesses as Aurora pulls in Jake, but Jake does the same. That means Aurora now hit by the grasp of death. Able to use the boulder, walk right out of there, and I think Aurora's going to be just fine. It's Benji that's here next.
Nice, use the ultimate from Adapting to make sure that disengage goes through. Benji's still chasing it out though, and Renegades, pretty low health, they're on the retreat.
You saw that Fear No Evil from Lasper. I think he thought Adapting was going to engage much harder, and instead Adapting dashes back out. The Fear No Evil wasted in Gold Fury at half already, but Radiance dropped the objective they started. Looks like they don't want to commit just yet. They're in a sticky situation here. Not so sure about how they want this fight to go. Benji goes in first, but Aurora gets pulled. That means they trade support for support. Variety now the next one up with the horse. That ultimate doesn't find much. Renegades are just clearing out, but Radiant posturing like they still want to do this Fury.
They're still very healthy. Renegades have to respond here, and they've lost some of the best initiation tools that they have. It's going to be a hard fight to get back in there, but Radiance, looking a little bit low themselves, don't want to take that engagement on a 50-50, that reset. Maybe a little bit smart, worried perhaps that Lazarus' ultimate would be coming up very soon with so much cooldown in his build, the Hydras and the Jotuns. We see Radiance take a small win and back up.
Benji and Variety locking horns again in the middle lane. Benji, though, able to make it out of there without too much trouble. A lot riding, I think, on the way Benji plays this game for Radiance, though, since he's kind of the only member on their team with a lead. Not kind of is. They're going to need him to use the fact that he's level 16 against the rest of the map. Meanwhile, Renegades are going to need a little bit to show up from their middle of the map, right? Jake, Van, and Lasper played this beginning of the game well. They're going to need them to continue that if they want to close this out.
Agreed. We also need to see a little bit more from Variety, I'd say. He decides that after a very good fight in the duo lane that he wants to move himself more so into this bruiser build instead of electing to pick up more tankiness like we're seeing from Benji's build. Goes into the sledge immediately. That's a big boost in power matched up with the shred that you get from Talu Assault. He's going to be doing a lot of damage, but this is good. Renegades pick up the Gold Fury. Radiance get caught sleeping at the wheel, and now we're starting to see that lead establish itself. Now the Renegades are differentiating, and where they're going to go next looks like they might have their eyes on Cyclone.
That's a great call there from Renegades to notice that Radiance just weren't around, so a free Fury for them. Radiance showing some positioning over near Pyro, perhaps, maybe looking for a counter objective, but I don't think they're going to get it. Variety right here in their face certainly knows it's there. Lasper drops the Fear No Evil in mid. Doesn't find much, so Adapting says he's hitting go, dropping the damage onto Lasper. Aurora off the mark with the driving strike, but has the boulder. That gets the kill, but Adapting has overcommitted. Venenu's ultimate punishes the Nemesis on the back of it, and Aurora, also too far forward, dies. So does Tings, and Benji stuck on cleanup duty. He does get rid of Venenu and makes his way back out. It ends up being 2 for 3, but I don't know about that one, Myth. It felt like such a heavy commitment there on the last.
Once Adapting's in there, the entirety of the team has to go in with them. They can't let Adapting go down for free, because then Renegades are going to pick up the Pyromancer for free, or Fire Giant on the tail end. With Cyclone Spin not rotating, that means that it has to be Aurora going in. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to connect the driving strike, which forces out the boulder as well. But Benji moving in, looking for the Pyromancer?
Yeah, trying to stop Bera from soloing it down. He really can't do it, though. Good ultimate from Bera. Guarantees they get the objective, and Benji not able to do much in that spot despite having the awareness. This is starting to get a little tough now for Radiance, isn't it, Myth? I mean, Renegades are only up 2k gold, but it feels like they have all the momentum. They've won every single fight since we've seen these solo laners start rotating in. The momentum certainly feels to be on their side.
And that's considering the last 2 full-on engagements, we've been getting close to 0 value out of Fear No Evil out of Lazara. Imagine once he gets into these fights and actually lands one. These are going to be some pretty handily taken engagements by the Renegades. But I don't want to consider it over just yet. We're still looking at very thin margins separating these 2 teams. One good engagement from the Radiants should be enough for them to turn some things around. As Oni Fury respawns the next couple of minutes, I imagine that's where we're going to see the next fight erupt. But we are getting to that critical point in the game where these SPL players really start to think about these fire giants, and as both teams start to rotate their way in there, I don't think either one can feel confident looking for the 50-50 because both of the mid laners for these drafts don't really have confirmation ultimates.
Well, Myth, I agree with your read, right? That Renegades are definitely, or that Radiant's definitely still in this one, but with the way these last 2 team fights have been going, Radiant's are going to have to approach these fights differently, right? The way that these have been going have not worked. What is the adjustment that Radiant's have to do? Is obviously we do have this pause coming in. If they want to start turning these team fights around, is it how they start them, or does Cyclone Spin got to get involved?
I would like to see Cyclone Spin inside some of these fights. We're seeing a lot of plucks come through or pulls from the Hercules, and it's just not really getting that much follow-up. Often imagine you get a cripple arrow in there, or even the follow-up of a Rom ultimate, or we play a little bit further back. Renegades are already showing that they're willing to play very aggressively right now, trying to bring the fight to Radiance. We could see Radiance trying to adapt that more reactive style that they've been kind of honing in on throughout the last couple of weeks instead of trying to match that same level of aggression. I understand that Aurora playing Hercules wants to be that playmaker. He wants to be in there and make these hero plays, but he's been getting plucked out at the offset of every single one of these engagements, and we've seen that once supports trade out, Renegades is coming out ahead in the 4v4 every single time.
It is. They've got this added element of control, I think, from this Grasp of Death ultimate from Veneno that's been in the middle of these fights. Even when they're missing out, as you pointed out, on that Fear No Evil helping them, they still have this big team-wide disruption that's been working for them. I think Ven played really well. 4-1-3 right now on the Persephone, having an excellent game for himself. We said that with this Persephone pick being their biggest value in response to the dual lane of Radiance, they need Ven to have a good game, and I think so far he's done that.
He really has. The Grasp of Deaths have been on point. He's been playing very safe in the backline. I think he's only got 1 death at this point, if memory's serving as well. He's playing incredibly safe, and he's playing behind his front line. And it seems like Radiance wants to work their way back there. That's why we're seeing these overcommitments, adapting, getting a little bit frustrated with the pace, perhaps diving into the tier 1, forcing Aurora to follow him up in there as well. But it's because the backline of the Renegades is playing incredibly safe. Even Barracuda hasn't really been truthfully involved in these engagements. We said we want Cyclone Spin in there. Barracuda's been largely unavailable as well, but it's because he's playing so far back that Radiance has to make this hard decision. Do we want to commit all of our damage onto Jake? And they've been, every single time when posed that question, they say yes, and afterwards they wonder why they lose the team fight. It's because they're looking for these aggressive plays when they're really not there.
Meanwhile, Renegades have had a field day punishing Aurora off the back of these Jake blocks, haven't they? 1, 5, and 6. He's been a part of every kill, but he's also been a part of the most deaths that Radiance have had to give over so far. And that's not such a bad thing, right? You're okay with your support being the one that dies. It's just a question of what is Aurora going to do to make sure he's not a viable target as another push-pull comes through. But Jake better this time with the ultimate. Lasper, though, in an awful spot. Fear No Evil does good to get him a little bit of time to reposition, and he's made his way back towards relative safety. But Benji, rotating on the top, nearly has caught him, forces him into a spot where Cyclone Spin can find the snipes. Great work there from Radiance. That starts with the punish onto Jake, and they finish it with the kill on the Lasper.
And Lazarus tries to take that 1v1 up against Adapting. Adapting just drops the beads and takes out the fight. With the crit in his build, already picked up a Rage and the Stone Cutting Sword just for the additional ability to win out in these 1v1s. Lazarus is not going to win that fight if Adapting has beads. He's going to have to play a little bit safer. And that's another engagement where we see the best Fear No Evil yet, being a one-man that gets beads out immediately. Lazarus needs to group up with the rest of his team if he wants to get any value. And now Radiance, great opportunity to push into a tier 2.
Just all of a sudden, right, Radiants are back on offense. This tier 2, though, in left, a bit tough to actually brute force down, and Renegades have shown up in defense. They got the tier 2 to half, Jake blinking out of trouble there in right, and Radiants had to give up this siege. I think that's fine, right? It was always going to be difficult to make that happen. They're going to take the reset. Looks like so are Renegades, but this Fury is up in 10 seconds, Myth. Radiants and Renegades both got to make sure they're there to defend.
If Radiance gets there first, though, they should be able to burn through that objective so quickly. Not only does the Nemesis have crit, but Cyclone Spin picks it up as well, immediately going to the Rage, has a stack on it already. But Radiance look like they know. Renegade's grouping up on the Oni first, but the entirety of Radiance going for fire.
This is, I mean, they have a ward on it, Renegades do, so they're going to know that this is happening. Sentry Warren on it, and Radiance are going to commit. Benji playing goalie in the middle lane. I love this from Radiance. From top to bottom, they thought this through, and the Fury's been burning quick. Myth, you're right to point out the crit damage. Renegades don't have enough to get there in time. What a trade. 3D chess while Renegades are playing checkers.
Yeah, you were playing the wrong game, Renegades. We got the better one. The Fire Giant, 22 minutes into the game, goes the way of Radiance. And now this slow game that we've been seeing, as they haven't separated at all in gold, is going to get blown wide open. Oh, look at all these tier 2s available.
This is how it always happens for Renegades fans, though none of them are surprised that it is a late-game decision-making error and not a mechanical one for this squad. They constantly have these types of problems at exactly this stage of the game. I don't know what it is, but there's openings, there's weaknesses there, there's miscalculations, and Radiance yet again find a way in.
I can't believe Renegades decided to finish off the gold 3 once they realized that Radiance has already worked
They
their way
saw!
to
You're
Fire
right!
Giants. They saw it, that you called it. It was on a ward. That's not us just having caster vision. Everyone, they got pinged. There are pings now when enemies walk on wards, and instead they decided to dedicate their time to finishing off the Fury, and then it was almost a lackadaisical rotation throughout the center. I think Lazar made eye contact with Benji, rolls his eyes and says, well, I guess we lose fire here. And immediately they give up. They don't look for the chase either. Now they have to play this more defensive style. But already, look at how they're positioning. Maybe a soft defense around the tier 1 and then a hard defense around the tier 2. But it's a 3-man grouping and Lazar isn't there.
So the mid-tier 1 goes down. That's almost nothing if you're the Renegades fans. You know that that's going to happen. But they are going to put up more of a fight over this mid-tier 2. It's all of Radiant stacked up in mid to try and make this happen. They don't really have the minion waves pushed up that far in the other lanes either, so they might commit here to mid, adapting in the jungle. The minion wave now in. Strife lands first, Benji right behind, but the minion wave is done. Pluck lands on the Benji, Apple comes through too, hits Beninu in the back line, and now he's half HP, but still, Radiant's not all the way committing. They've got Aurora taking up the tower. It's starting to fall low, and Radiant's get another objective. They're going to need a little bit more, though, if they want this lead to be enough to where they're in control. Still, Renegades in reach, only down 2K.
And they've exposed one of the Phoenixes now. Now, Renegades didn't have to commit a single ultimate to that defense. They're willing to just try and buy some time on these tier 2 towers. They're not looking necessarily to stop Radiance in their tracks, which is a very smart play because they save all their ultimates. The threat of this defense on the tier 2 is just as hard as it was in the tier 2 and mid. Now, the Radiance are to play into it again, but this time without the golden apple from Big Man Tings. I like this play from Renegades. Just waste as much time as you can.
Things are even. Don't give up any ground for fully free. Pluck from Jake brings Benji in. Sentinel Azus, though, is the response. Cyclone spin up to the sky with the snipes, and it's enough to get rid of Jake. Last Rest, Fear No Evil. That does provide some disruption, but Radiance comfortably able to re-engage right back in. That should be the tier 2 tower theirs. Barracuda barely makes it out with that Bifrost, but Aurora able to punish Lasbra on the back. Radiance getting mid-tier 2, right tier 2, and now they got the 5v3 advantage. They're going to claim a Phoenix on the back of all this.
No ultimate from Venenu, no ultimate from Variety either, means that another Phoenix likely going to fall here. 40 seconds left on Lasbra, Radiance barreling in.
They want the middle Phoenix here as well. Not done, not satisfied with the right side Phoenix. Maybe the boys need a Snickers. They take the middle Phoenix down. And Radiance, that's how you use this Fire Giant. How many times, Myth, have we seen teams grab this late game objective, maybe get a tier 1 or a tier 2 somewhere? You have got to break it open with this first FG.
And they absolutely do, but maybe off a misplay from Renegades again. It felt like they wanted to throw out that soft defense, and immediately we see Jake commit himself for the pluck. And this is something that Raffer has talked about at nauseum, at length. If you are so back in the late game, and you go for the pluck, and you know whoever you're plucking has beads up, you sacrificed your life for those beads, is essentially what happened. Cyclone Spin deals 80% of Jake's health bar while he's still in that pluck animation, and then from there finishes him up with the snipe, and after that, Renegades lose out on one of their best tools for backline peel. Now this Sobek won't be there for the Phoenix defense, and it felt like Renegades had made the response in that moment. Okay, well, our Phoenix defense is going to be weak. We've already got Radiance kind of in a position where we can fight them. Let's dedicate our numbers in mass and see if we can turn this fight around. And Radiance had the Fire Giant. It's a tier 2 tower. You are at such a disadvantage here that you essentially give up a free fight that opens you up to losing the right and center Phoenix. Renegades, another weird call in the late game, cost them a lot.
It's been almost all decision-making from Renegades. I don't think it's a mechanical gap at all, Mifflin. I really don't, with how the early game went. Now Benji looking for Ben in right. The solo lane, solo agent causing problems. Now the snipes are there too, and Venenu is already gone. Radiance just whip it out of the window with the ultimate and Aurora takes care of Barracuda too. Now Lasbra is into the backline, collapsing onto Radiance. That is it for Cyclone Spin. A lot of the sustained damage is gone now for Radiance, but I don't think they're done looking for punishes just yet. Jake getting controlled by Aurora in the back of the fight, and now the sides are swift. Radiance is chasing Renegades into Radiance's side of the map. Gonna make it so hard for them to run away. Jake falls first. Variety, low on options, is in trouble here as well. Radiance continue to have perfect target selection.
They do, tearing through each individual member of the Renegades one at a time. Lasbra has Fear No Evil that entire time, leaves his homies to die. He could have at least dropped the ultimate and then disengaged himself, but instead doesn't even use it inside of that fight. Now Fire Giant gonna go the way of Radiance. I think to myself, I have to wonder, maybe they could have just gone for the end there, but instead gonna wait a couple of seconds for Cyclone Spin to respawn, make sure everyone gets that buff, and then siege the base one more time. Renegades, it's gonna take a miracle if they want to stop this push. 10,000 gold and a Fire Giant 28 minutes into the game.
And it just hasn't been a huge disparity between these teams. I really want to stress it. It is the Fire Giant call while Renegades were on gold. That was the first big play, Myth. And then that tier 2 tower defense in right that you already broke down so eloquently, where Jake, I think, has a bit of a miscalculation there. Those two plays, to me, really are it in terms of the disparity between these two teams in this game. And that's all it takes, man, with a team like Radiance. That fight in right just now, where Radiance is up like 8k gold, that's not Renegades making mistakes. You're down 8k gold for that, right? It's more those two big plays, and Radiance have really, really capitalized on them well.
They have, but I don't want to give Renegades a get-out-of-jail-free card. They don't have to get caught on the right side of the map. They decide to step up a little bit too far, you know, maybe a little bit of mechanical differential, but losing the fight, absolutely, you could tie back into the gold. But, you know, it's that same discussion of when Lazarus having a good game, that's when Renegades looks good. Lazarus looked really good for the first 10 minutes, but come mid-game, my man vanished like the Avatar. Yeah. When we needed him most, he was gone, and now we need him really bad. Get to this Phoenix, bud.
Yeah, someone's got to get him out of the iceberg, but Jake not going to get the help in time. Cyclone Spin melts him quick off the setup from Aurora, and this is why you can't give the man Hercules. He's just too good at it at every stage of the game. Now Benji into the backline. Barracuda, the one controlled. Can't use the Bifrost because the control is there. Barely escapes, but the dive in the backside is on. But Tings gets the peel from Cyclone Spin and lives through it all. Double kill for Tings as Venenu falls as well. That should be it. Radiance have broken open the base. They've broken Renegades, and they've taken game one.
They sure have, and in a convincing manner as well. Radiance with this aggressive playstyle, but keeping the discipline from that counter-punch meta that they were trying to establish for themselves. Wait for the perfect opportunity. I can't get over it. That Fire Giant call was amazing. They know, all right, Oni Fury spawns soon, Renegades in the lead. They're going to run there. Stupid, we want Fire Giant. And they just take it, dude. Amazing play.
And you got to think, remember, there was a Gold Fury not too far before that Radiance kind of slept on a little bit. Now Radiance coming back like, man, our Gold Fury secure is kind of sick, huh? No, man, we're on FG. You got to be thinking about the big picture. And Radiance take game one. Myth, that was a great game. I can only hope game two lives up to it. Quick break, and we'll be right back.
Game 1 is almost spot on at that 30-minute mark. Could have been quicker if the Renegades were able to close out on some early game advantages, but Radiant hang around, they turn it around, and they take the lead 1-0 here in this set. Aggro is with me to walk me through what goes wrong there and what happens. It seemed like the Renegades were playing lights out for a little while there until the end.
You just give enough chances to Aurora on Hercules, and he's going to put you out of position. And that happened to Jake over and over and over again in this game. 1-6 for Jake. He felt like he had next to no impact in this game, and he still had more player damage than Lasbra at the end of the game. I think that tells a large story. How many fights did Jake insta-die in and still end up with more damage than Lasbra? We started the whole set talking about jungle and how important that is, Dave, to get that in the right spot and bring yourself into a position where you can win in those late game fights. And we just did not see that out of Lasbra in this game. Only 7,000 player damage. Was great early, and that's been the story for this guy basically his whole career. Early game has been good. He has yet to prove that he can really be the difference maker late game. And I think that's where you look at guys like Sam for Soccer, for Ghost, who is so key for that team. Obviously, we think of Ghost as this early game dominating team. They do it all the time. But I think Sam's maybe greatest strength is that he almost never loses Assassin 1v1s late game. He is so good at that part of the game. I think it's very clear whenever you have a jungler who does struggle in that moment, and that's really been Lasbra's primary problem all year long.
And you know, adapting, it's not like adapting blew the Renegades out of the water here, but was able to double up on the damage that Lasbra did and really set up for the two guys we've highlighted here. Benji on the Nike, Big Man Ting's back on this Discordia. We saw, you know, a dip in her play. I think it was phase 1, right, where she was effectively picked in or banned in almost every single game, or at least in every once a set that we were watching. You know, maybe some changes around her, but BMT still showing, specifically with the ultimate, he's hitting those strikes consistently, and if you can set up around Discordia, you know, obviously it's something that still works. You wonder, Aggro, and I always like to kind of scratch my head and am curious about these types of things. If she starts to fall into ban territory against a team like Radiance, because Big Man Tings has been playing it so well.
I don't think it's in first ban territory yet.
No.
I think it's certainly in second ban territory. I mean, in that game, Renegades had an opportunity to ban away a mage, and they decided to ban Ra, left Disco open. I'm not saying that you're feeling a lot better about that game if Ra's open, because you might not be, but we know the outcome through the Discordia. I think it's probably time for, if you're banning a Big Man Ting's God, bottom 2, Disco should probably be the first one on that list. I think he's been too consistent on it.
Yeah, agreed. Fair enough there. Not much changes throughout the first two bans here. Erlang Shen still gone. Umoja off to the side there as well. I think, you know, we talked just slightly about adapting there towards the end around some of the highlights in the post-game. It's also going to be another Ratatosker ban, so still highlighting some of Lasbra in the ban column. Nemesis is in sort of a weird spot, I feel like, Aggro, where we've seen games where she can still tear people apart, but even on sort of a winning matchup there down the stretch, maybe felt a little bit off still for adapting. Where do we value Nemesis, do we think, at the moment, as far as the entire jungle? I'm not going to ask you to tier list, but, you know, is she good? Do we want to pick her still?
Yeah, she's good. Look, Adapting's job in that game was to go, hey, Aurora, thank you for this frontliner right in front of me. I'm going to press 4 on this dude, and then everyone's going to insta-kill them, and I've done my job in the jungle. That was Adapting's job in that game, and he did his job effectively. That's what makes Nemesis really interesting to me, is that she fills so many different roles, can be the hyper carry, can be the follow-up person. In that game, Adapting's job was to follow up. Adapting followed up. The Nemesis worked very well. It doesn't need to be a top ban, I don't think, but it can just be a very solid pick for you in the jungle.
And I actually think that sort of caters to something Scream was talking to me about in the post-game interview of our previous set. He was, you know, talking about how flexible jungle can be at the moment, and many junglers can wear many different hats. You see Sino loves the warriors out of the jungle. Scream likes some of these unconventional assassin-y type picks. So I think fair enough. I think it's bad for any of us to be discounting any picks, because each jungler fills sort of a slightly different role maybe on their team. Time to catch up, though, in the picks and bans here for game number 2. Set and Nike both taken away from Radiance. Radiance obviously loves that set pick, so I think smart if you don't have a rock-solid game plan locked in against the set, and then the Persephone is going to get banned out as well by Radiance this time, so Venenu is going to be have to be on something a little bit different. Still that Rom first pick here, aggro, immediately followed up by the Sun Wukong for Benji. I mean, if you can't get the Nike, Sun Wukong seems like a pretty good consolation prize there to snag into your second pick.
Yeah, Radiance not really changing a whole lot in their draft. I mean, they're sticking to their overall game plan, which is prioritize Cyclone, Benji, and Aurora, and I'm just surprised that Renegades give up the Hercules again after how well Aurora played. I mean, look, he had a lot of deaths in that game, but how many fights did he insta-win for Radiance by killing a frontliner for Renegades? The only way you are willing to give Aurora Hercules again is if you look into Jake's eyes and go, hey, man, you're not going to get Herc comboed every fight, right?
Right.
And he goes, right, I will not get Herc comboed every fight. That's the only way that you have to make, that you can leave this open in my mind. Jake cannot play it the same way he just did, because I don't think Renegades will win if he does.
And the rest is looking the same here as well. It's going to be, still jungle-centric over towards Lasba. Renegades don't feel like there's enough pressure on Laz to need to take a pick early on in their first 3. It's another mid-lane ban against BMT for the Renegades down the stretch. It's the Ra once more, so Discordia is still open if the Renegades want to go back to things here. Another Fenrir ban. So this is sort of a case of the Renegades maybe or Radiance rather, feeling like they know sort of what went wrong in that early game, and like they're comp enough to sort of run it back now down the stretch. There will be a pivot, though, for Lasbra. We've talked about the Nemesis a little bit, just over that 50% win rate mark, and now Lasbra gets a go to try to improve that a little bit.
Now, I like this switch up for Renegades quite a bit because they can do something very similar to what Radiance just did to them. It's instead of a Hercules pull and push combo, it's a Sobek pluck, but you just nem for that dude and you kill that dude before he gets to play. That should be the game plan here for Renegades. This is a tank-killing composition. You look at Guan Yu, Prot Tread on the 3, Sobek, displacement for frontliners, Heimdall. We can just insta-ult the Hercules as soon as he gets Sobek plucked and lands. We can insta-kill that guy. Nem, Prot Tread. This composition for Renegades has to kill frontline. This cannot be a dive into the backline all the time. They can do that pretty well, but I think that they are much more oriented. And with Aphrodite as well. Okay, you group up, you death ball, you just link one of the frontliners or your nemesis, and you just pluck one after the other, and you just conveyor belt Radiance into you, and you kill them for it. That has got to be the game plan here for Renegades. Don't worry about anything else. Let's kill that front line.
Seems pretty clear for Radiance as well. They got a few knockups. They got into Wheelix. Is that how you imagine this composition playing out for the enemy team across from Renegades?
It's smart because you have this opportunity to really displace that death ball effectively. Now, there are 2 different ways in my mind that you combat group up comps like what Renegades have. You can either draft insane AoE and try and Zeus ult the whole team and really set yourself up that way, or you can try and pull them apart with crowd control. Looks like Radiance is going for the latter, and I think it can work.
Both teams with a clear game plan going into game number 2. Down to the casters we go.
Thanks to also Dagger on the desk yet again. We will be provided the views yet again by Doug. And Radiance yet again get a roar here on this Hercules. Will it be a problem? Or will it be more of a sort of medium game like we saw from him last time? Radiance clearly, though, Myth, trying to play around this Wheelish. Ox knock up, Hebo knock up, Hercules knock up. People are getting pulled this time for sure.
They should be, and not a ton of CC immunity inside the Ultimates. Lazra in particular, the only one actually who doesn't, is going to have those beads pretty early on. That's why we see him pick it up at level 1 instead of the traditional blink out of that role. But you know what? Aggro tried to address the strengths of Renegade's draft, but there is an inherent weakness to these Death Ball-esque drafts where it's a very one-note engage. You need Jake to hit the pluck. You need variety to hit the cavalry charge. If any single member of Renegades dies here, if it's a core member like Ven, like Jake, their team fight is going to take a nosedive in effectiveness instantly. And what does Radiance have? They've got a pick draft. That a wheelish gravity surge being so easy to set up for means that they could do it consistently. It doesn't matter how much CC immunity you have. If they do it to you 3 times in a row, eventually someone's going to die. And that's where I'm worried about Renegades struggling. They're going to play very smart around the mid to late game.
Yeah, this is a game where Lasbra's going to be way more involved than we saw him in the tail end of game number 1. I think they've put, yet again, a ton of pressure onto Ven and Jake with this game, too. As you mentioned, they're almost 100% reliant on Jake's engage here. I think that Varieties is good, too. But I don't know if it's going to necessarily be what they're going in very first with all the time, as Lasbra cringe ganking yet again. Is Radiance ready for it? They want Aurora driving strike, but he is slow. Dash gets Lasbra there, and Aurora going to have a hard time getting away. I meant to say Aurora going to walk away easily, and Lasbra gets nothing off the level 2 gank.
What an interesting rotation path there. We see Adapting just showing face enough to scare Lasbra off there. I thought maybe Aurora would try and use the driving strike to rejoin Cyclone Spin in the lane, but instead rotates immediately towards his jungler. Good communication from Radiance to get him out of that situation. And now Renegades make a small commitment, not really any actives used. They just pluck it out, get a little bit of poke out there. Aurora gets zoned off a couple minions. They at least went out a little bit as far as EXP and gold.
Adapting, able to get the beads there out of Venenu. Probably a little bit of that knockup from Ting scaring him as well, and Ven does manage to stay alive. But just that little engagement, pretty valuable. Those Cyclone Spin beads on cooldown as well over there in the lab, so not as if Lasbra's gank earlier got nothing. So it's a decent little trade here from these junglers earlier. Clearly Adapting and Tings want to be the synergy here in mid. Meanwhile, Lasbra looking to see what he can do over there in duo, but still, I don't know if this game is going to necessarily be decided by what's happening here, Myth. This is going to come down to their execution, and I mean Renegades in particular with this Death Ball comp. They're going to need to be really, really clean for it to work.
They are, and now Ven, I think, is in a very precarious situation. Aphrodite, most abusable in the early game, losing out on the beads that early on. Do you see the damage the big man Ting was able to put out on his own? About 50% off of the water spout and water cannon, and that's without Adapting using the feather step. So now I'm expecting we see a little bit more pressure on the mid, at least until this Aphrodite takes over to level 5 and gets the Undying Love of Beads Aegis in one button. Until then, you have to play very safe.
Going to make sure that he's being careful, and I wonder who Ven is going to be linking up to in the late game. On the desk, Aggro said it needs to be one of these frontliners, right? Make sure that Jake of Variety don't have to pay the iron price for engaging for this team. But, as you covered, Lasbra doesn't have the ultimate CC immunity to get out of trouble. I wonder if we might also see Ven linking up to him as Adapting, rotating over to solo. Variety is backing, and there's the disruption from Benji. That just set up for Adapting's ultimate here, but as long as Variety has cavalry charge, should be pretty tough to stop him. Doesn't have it, doesn't need it, and they end up not getting the gank. But Lasbra ganking duo and Aurora won't be as lucky the second time around. First blood goes to Renegades.
Yeah, that's the second gank in 4 minutes from the Renegades on the duo lane. They're really trying to shut him down there, but now Ven in a little bit of trouble.
Whoa! But they can't have that miscommunication, doesn't matter, I suppose, but they get the kill either way. Myth, I don't know about that, but they get the kill.
Hey, look, BMT should know better, all right? Jungler hits the knockup, jungler gets the gravity surge. You gotta defer to me. That my CC is conditional, okay? Wait till I set you up in the future.
That's true,
BMT
actually.
takes all the blame here in my mind, but it's absolutely fine. The kill still goes the way of Radiance, and it's a nice return kill. Instead of losing out on a support, in exchange they pick up the mid laner Ven, and his beads still weren't up. Nice pressure. But now that Undying Love is going to be available very soon, and the beads as well have come back up for him, it's going to be very hard to replicate that for Radiance.
You know, Myth, you might have been like 10% joking with that one, but I actually think you're right in terms of waiting on the CC to line you up, right? You got to make sure that you're there on it. He's certainly going to be using that ultimate in that one. Either way, I think that that does indicate at least a little bit of the communication, maybe not being there for Radiance. Who knows if that's, you know, a symptom or a one-off thing. We'll see, but I don't know. That worried me a little bit. That should be textbook every single time, and just a little bit off the mark, but they get the kill anyway. I might be overreacting.
If we see it again, it's an issue. Seeing it that early on in the game lets you know, oh, word, we can mess this up. Let's not do that again. Hey, I'm going to gravity surge. Next time, wait with the crushing wave, and it should work out pretty easily. Luckily, it doesn't really amount to much there, but if it continues, that's when it becomes a real issue. And I want you to know, when I'm talking about jungle, I'm never joking. We're the best, and people need to know it.
That's life or death, man, and that's how you got to play the jungle, adapting. Not able to find this gank over here in left. A little bit of presence, though. Is it really all of Radiance are here in left? What is this all about? Even Benji has joined in deep into enemy territory. There's nothing to get there. And I think with this rotation, Radiance got to be on the hunt for something. They get down in time to defend their own red buff, find nothing to invade. Benji backs and uses the 72 transformations to try and get back to lane quickly. So, big grouping from Radiance over there on the left, but doesn't really amount to much of anything.
Had Renegades decided to go in towards that red buff, that huge grouping from Radiance would have likely resulted into a double kill if Renegades tries to forward that invade. You already grouped up on the left side of the map, could have gone in towards the Gold Fury. So I like the idea from Radiance to at least try and play proactively and try and find a way into that objective early on. But because Benji goes for the blink very early, it means that he's going to miss out on the ability to rotate into his lane or into his team fight freely. Whereas on the other end, we see that Variety picks up the teleport. So now when he rotates out, if we see a split push situation for Benji, he can just go back to lane very easily.
Does give a little bit more adaptability over there for Variety. Trying my best not to say Variety for Variety. As Aurora and Psycho and Spin take a little bit of a battle here with Jake, who is sticking around, has the charge prey, but now he's got to get away from the boulder and the snipes. And that one a bit ill-advised there from Jake. Good punish from Radiance, and they've now got the kill lead on their side.
We gotta see Jake play a little bit more cautiously around these plucks. That's twice now in this set where he's just kind of lost out on his life off of mispositioning. He needs to play a little bit safer at this point. There's not even a ton of kill potential in that lane with the Heimdall. You're gonna need a little bit more from your teammates, maybe a jungle rotation or a mid rotation to help set you up there, because Hercules and Ram, they're gonna win that 2v2 almost every single time. But nothing ventured, nothing gained, and still nothing really separating these two teams too much at this point. XP and gold largely the same between these two squads. I'm waiting for the first neutral objective, probably around that 10-minute mark on that gold for you to see how this game is really going to pan out.
I think I agree. I don't think this one's going to be tremendously impacted rather, by the way these first few minutes go, unless something gets really out of control. But there's the blink in from Jake, gets the beads out from Tings, who's still turning around, maybe just run away in the horror movie instead of looking behind you. Now the red buff being stolen. Good knockup from Adapting, but Lasper had the beads. Adapting gonna blink in a lot of damage, and Venenu ends up low. Not enough to find a punish. Radiance nearly defended that 2-on-3, but they do end up losing the red.
Seeing that damage from Adapting makes me have to wonder, what happens if Crushing Wave comes out there? Maybe he hits 2, maybe he's worried about the Undying Love, just happy to pull the beads off of Lasbra and the ult out of the Aphrodite, but potentially there's a scenario there where that fight goes a lot better for Radiance, but it's one that we'll never get to see. But stripping so much away in exchange for that red buff might have been worth it if Radiance are willing to play pretty aggressively around this gold free. Beads off of 2 members, ult off the Aphrodite. That's a huge swing in team fight presence, but it seems like they're not quite willing to make that commitment just yet.
So they are going to be playing it a little bit more cautiously, not going to throw anything away now if they don't have to, it would seem, is the call there from Radiant. So things still slowing down a little bit. 3 kills in 9 minutes. We've talked a good bit about how we expect Renegades to want to try and play this one. Maybe grouping up around this Aphrodite, looking for the Sobek Guan to be their initiators. But what about Radiance? They want the picks, but who is the target they want most often? Is it just Lasper without the CCMU ult?
If they could find Lasbra, they're happy. As far as I'm concerned on Radiance, any pick is a good pick. They're not really trying to prioritize. They're not going to be choosy with it. If they see a scenario where Jake's out of position, they should absolutely jump on him. And I think that we should talk about the pace of this game. Because Radiance has a more standard comp, they have the clear advantage in this early phase of the game before Renegades is able to group up and play that 5-on-5. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to lose out once that 5-on-5 begins, but I think that if Radiance doesn't play aggressively around this phase, they're missing out on an opportunity where they have a clear advantage.
But this is Renegades in the jungle of Radiance. Where is this aggression coming from? Jake should be able to make it out thanks to a great ultimate from Variety, but now Variety is the one that's pulled in. And I'm not so sure about trading the solo life for the support myth. Maybe a little bit of a miscalculation with that whole engagement.
Yeah, I don't even know what they're looking for there. I mean,
Right?
back camps maybe, Jake walking in alone. It's such a strange decision for Renegades to dig their heels in deep and fight around the right side back camps of Radiance. And Radiance absolutely happy with it. Any pick is a good pick. Sure, we'll go to Jake. Oh, Jake makes it out. Variety's here. Let's get him instead. And they're absolutely happy with it. But now what are they going to do with this lead? This 2 seconds while Variety is still dead. Not much is available, but Benji is able to get a good deal of pressure off in that lane. No teleport for a full minute means Variety is going to fall pretty far behind here. But look at this grouping. Renegades ready to fight again.
It's so funny. You said Radiant's got to be aggressive early, and Renegade said, you said us? I heard an R in there somewhere. That's us. We're going to fight. And they do move in down to the camps. Ill-advised from top to bottom, I felt, about that little skirmish. But it's certainly not doom and gloom, as Benji, inside his own jungle, could be in some trouble. We know he's got that ultimate there, though. So not going to be the end of that one by any stretch. Should be able to make it out, should it come to that for him in that side of the jungle. We'll be working, though, what we can do to get us back into the action. Looks like we're going to have to come out of the game on that one. We'll get right back in as soon as possible. But as I was just saying, it looks like Renegade's not afraid to take some fights here in the early.
Which is so interesting, knowing that they're a death ball team comp. Aggro highlighted it so eloquently on the desk. That's exactly what that draft is really good at. They want to group up as 5. They want to take these elongated fights around objectives where they can control a conveyor belt, have plucks come through, set up for 1 kill, back up, heal with the Aphrodite, rinse, repeat, do that continually until you're able to break the wall that is Radiance. So it's so strange to me see them take these disjointed fights, 3 members together at the enemy's back camps, 2 members here, 3 members there. It doesn't make much sense. And it feels like Renegades, it's almost a product of the frustration that they're experiencing maybe from game 1 or from the pacing from game 2, where they're feeling like they have to, borrow a phrase from Jake here, turn on the jets. You don't need to turn on the jets. Wait till 25, 30 minutes. Wait till then. Then your jets are already on, bud. All right? Play around your strongest phase.
Yeah, that's a good point. They don't even necessarily have jets to turn on right now, right? They got to wait till later until they can hit to that level. Not as if they can't fight here at all, but certainly their strength is the late game around this Aphrodite. And I think Radiance did a good job both setting their own pace at times and then responding to what Renegades has given them. In game 1, it's exactly what they did. They see an overcommit from Renegades on gold, so they go fire. Game number 2, an overcommit from Renegades on backs, and then they'll take the team fight. Whatever it is, I think Radiance have the response.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It just feels like a disjoint from Renegades, which is interesting, especially considering the history of these 2 teams in recent weeks. You'd expect Radiance maybe coming in looking a little bit more shaky. They got a couple wins on their belt recently, but if you take a look at the last 4 or 5 weeks as a whole, it's Radiance that's been kind of on this backwards trend, recently going a little bit up. But now, this week, week 13, we're seeing them come in and look like phase 1 Radiance or beginning of phase 2 as they come with the more standard draft that we'd expect from them. Hercules with Aurora, and now finding pressure out of the duo lane, rotating throughout the map very easily. We're seeing Benji making high committal rotations towards the Gold Fury in the early game, just on the off chance that they might be able to find a Gold Fury. This is a Radiance that is rejuvenated and revitalized, looking for proactive plays on the map. And this is the Radiance that I think garnered a lot of fans. I love seeing them play like this.
Me too, man. It's hard not to root for these Radiance guys when they're on point, right? When they're feeling it as a squad and they're playing it well, because they are just a fun team to watch. So many of the teams that we have in the SPL are as well, so we're really at a great point. Now, obviously, we are in a pause here. We're going to be trying to get us back into the action here momentarily, so no worries there in the chat. We'll be getting the action coming up here in just a moment. Miff, we talked about how this game may be one that gets decided by the late game more than what we see here in the early, but I don't think it's going to take many more missteps here for Radiance to have a window to get some objectives and start finding a bit of a punish here in the early game. I don't know if Renegades are going to get their even late game fight they were expecting if they don't kind of make sure they're more careful here at this point.
Renegades just need to turtle up. That's really all it is. They don't have to look for these high-octane plays. But again, look, the exact same thing, a 4-man grouping in the enemy jungle.
Jake has now used the pluck, looking to see if he can grab on to Benji, perhaps, or maybe onto Adapting. Looks like they already did get the kill there onto Benji a little bit earlier. That was the one they had initially in some trouble, and now they're going to make their way over towards Pyromancer. So not bad little sequence here from Renegades. This time the aggression has netted them some value. The pick in the solo laner and grabbing that neutral objective on the Pyro.
I like that play, actually. They force out Radiance ever so slightly, realizing that Benji has to go back to base. He's completely They force Adapting to use the Blink defensively, and from there, Radiance only has 2 members healthy enough to contend, so they don't have to go in towards that Pyromancer themselves. Instead, Renegades pick it up for free. But that's just a stopgap measure, a small tool there to give them about a 600 gold lead. They're going to need to do a little bit more if they want to establish it into something tangible.
And this looks like where they were able to catch out to Benji. He made up with the Somersault Cloud, but the Lovebirds were already on him. That dot damage enough, and Benji ended up falling. I think without the benefit of the spectator vision like we had, Benji didn't realize the trouble and didn't manage to ult up in time. So good work there from Renegades to find that pick. We were critiquing their aggression, but that time they were able to make it into a pick, and if Aurora's not careful, he could easily be next.
He could be, but he's also got to maintain this pressure and take a peek at the level disparity between Aurora and Jake at this point. 2 levels, so Aurora should be feeling confident enough to step up aggressively, but maybe not this aggressively. He's largely isolated, but Radiance grouping up with him, looking for anything that they can. It seems like they're trying to make an exact same play Renegades played, but for the Gold Fury this time.
See what they can do. Maybe trying to bait like they're on gold. You can see them lurk around the corner. I like that from Adapting. Throw out a cheeky little knock-up. If it lands, you'll take it. If not, no harm, no foul. Not is the world that we're in, so Radiance end up falling back. Don't find anything there at that little fight. And Myth, normally I feel like with these Aphrodite comps, we say that they've got a half-D lead in the late game, but it doesn't feel like that's quite the case here. Do you think you really heavily favor Renegades at the 30-minute mark, or do Radiant still have plenty of chance with all this damage to fight back in?
It's hard to say, right? How much of that Aphrodite late game lead are we associating just because it's SSG that's almost exclusively picking that god, and we know that they're going to be phenomenal in the late game, whereas Renegades is a team that I think, and how we saw in game 1, struggles a little bit come late game as far as decision making or target selection goes. But I think that with a draft that is so reliant on every single piece kind of firing on all cylinders, where it's very execution centric, where you need Jake or you need Variety, you need them both really if you want to have a good team fight come late. I think that maybe a little bit of that lead is mitigated, but certainly still there. The sustain is still there around these elongated objective fights. I think you could favor Renegades slightly, but their comp is still definitely very hard to execute on.
I agree. I don't think it's an auto win for Renegades by any means, but certainly in a good position. It'll just depend on how they choose to execute. So once again, the pace slowed down. The last couple of times, it has been Renegades that has kind of stepped up the pace and looked for these fights. You got the pick they got onto Benji. You have the aggression to the back camps where Radiant were able to find the pick onto Variety. And all of that has kind of been at the result of Renegades looking for a little bit more action. So maybe they're the ones we should expect to be looking to get active next time around, as Adapting has to be careful. Into the jungle yet again go Renegades of the enemy team. Jake, hungry for a pluck target, but can't find it there. Meanwhile, Benji doing as solo laners do and proxy farming all the way at the other team's Phoenix. He's a Sun Wukong, though, so I imagine he's largely safe, but Veneno and the boys are moving into the jungle, looking to cut him off at the pass. That's the Kiss landing. Benji, as the Ox form, though, makes it out of there pretty easily.
It's a lot of damage, though, just from Aphrodite. That Doom Orb putting in some work, 145 power, ticks away about 20% of Benji's HP bar there. Luckily, he's already got the Soul Leader, so he should be able to sustain that up. If Renegades are going to continue playing exactly like this, they're already establishing that roaming death ball that we highlighted earlier. They just kind of moved that date up a little bit. Instead of in the late game, they're bringing it in the mid. Then they can absolutely continually play this aggressive style, walk into the enemy jungle, do whatever you need to, because they're playing to the strength of their draft. But now, Radiance waiting for an opportunity for the gold.
They've got good confirm, but they don't even use the crushing wave. Radiance trusting their damage, and they were correct. Renegades even close with that slice and dice, couldn't strip it away, and Radiance get the first neutral objective of this game. I don't know if that's entirely fair. Pyro did go to Renegades after they got that pick onto Benji. So the first Fury of the game. I'll stay in the realm of truth and congratulate Radiant on a well-timed objective.
It was well played, and I think once we saw that slice and dice come through, that's when Big Man Tings makes the decision, okay, I don't really need to use my crushing wave here. My water cannon's still going to be the highest damaging ability that anyone in like a 3-mile radius has, so instead he confirms it with that. So good discipline from him there. Had he decided to use Crushing Wave, it would have only delivered him into the front line of the Renegades, exactly where you don't want to be in the maw of the beast. So maybe he values his life a little bit more, so willing to put a little bit more risk on that Gold Fury. Either way, though, Radiance rather come away with a small lead. But as of yet, we're going into the late game, or the mid-late game, late mid-game, maybe that's better, completely even. Completely even as far as I'm concerned. Only about 2,000 gold separating these two teams in a draft where Renegades should be slightly favored coming in with this Aphrodite. I don't think they have to feel too bad around these objective fights if we do see them start to group up around this Pyromancer or the Fire Giant.
No, I don't think they'll have to feel bad about the position that they're in here at all. This is certainly comfortable, I think, in the way that you draw it up here for Renegades. If they're going to get Herc and a Wheelish, I think you'd expect to be, honestly, maybe a little bit more behind here at this point, right? But Radiance, while they've taken some good fights, made some aggressive calls, it's not been anything out of the box or anything like that at all. So Renegades feeling pretty comfortable, I would say, here at this point. So it's much more a question of how do they want this match to end up going once we do see those 5-on-5s in the late game. Who's going to be the one starting the fight? Will it be Jake looking for plucks or Variety looking for the stuns on Cavalry Charge? Or will Radiant started as a Roar? Wants to try and commit here onto Variety. They do have the driving strike, but how much solo potential do they have on the own? Maybe trying to force out the Cavalry Charge is the idea. Variety does not flinch, though. He gives them nothing, and Radiance instead head back into the jungle.
Aurora playing with a little bit of fire here, deep in enemy territory, gets spotted out by Lazra. Now Collapse can come through, but the rest of Radiance not too far behind. Enough threat there that Renegades don't want to commit. And Radiance, well, all of a sudden, they just want every objective on the map.
Now they'll take Pyromancer as well. Benji still in the front line, though. Unable to get the knock up while Variety is in the middle of using the Taolu Assault, so he ends up making it back. Now in these next few fights, if Big Man Teams is looking to be the confirm on these objectives, he'll have to position a little bit kind of beyond the halfway mark. You want a Crushing Wave towards the homies instead of away, if that's the way he's going to use it. So you can kind of tell if that's the plan, I'd think, from the way Big Man Teams would position, I suppose, in the position like we saw earlier. Likely not going to be coming out.
Yeah, I agree completely. And even if he does, if he positions how we saw him earlier, it also opens you up to the opportunity if Renegades do commit to a steal. Sometimes you do want to just ult into their front line. If you see an opportunity to hit 2 or 3 members, that's going to be a lot better, and it makes it a lot easier for your team to follow up if you're creating the space that way. So I think Big Man Team's definitely hedging his bets with that positioning. But Benji getting a little bit caught up by Lazra. Somersault Cloud, bird form, he should be absolutely fine.
What is? Why are we running at solo laners right now in the late game? We're just hitting folks we can hit right now, seeing what poke we can get away with and what we can make stick here at this point of the game. And it does result in Benji taking a little trip to the base. So there's a tiny, tiny window here, but look how spread Renegades are. They're not looking to climb through any windows right now. This is a team that is farming it up. The Hunters have made it back over to the long lane. Cyclone Spin and Barra are farming it up. Aurora a little too far forward up in mid, but continuing to see what he might be able to find. There's always these mind games with Kurt, but he lands the driving strike, a free ultimate coming up from Venenu, and the beat! Aurora turns a dance into the mid lane into a very favorable little fight.
That can't happen. You can't have Aurora literally walk up and punch you. He didn't have to work for it. He just takes it and he does it again. Variety cut out.
And now Variety sees the Cavalry Charge. Renegades getting their ultimates forced out on sale. It's a bargain, no cost, but Tings will fall to the ultimate coming out from Jake. That's punishment going the other way as Renegades have a good fight. Though Aurora does get the kill on Jake in trade, but not a good one as Barracuda gets adapting as well. That seemed to start off well for Radiance, but Renegades had the response.
A fantastic turnaround. That healing from Aphrodite really rearing its head there, making it so hard for anyone to fall low enough for Radiance to follow up. And it was a weird engagement. It felt like Aurora did the most he could. He walks up, burns the beads and ultimate off of the Aphrodite, does the exact same thing again to Variety, but instead it's Renegades coming out ahead. They could get a tier 2 tower for their trouble as well.
Yeah, Benji ended up very far forward in that fight as it looks like Radiant's not done looking for more. Aurora pushing up. Likes this shield of regrowth. It gives him the movement speed off that heal, and that lets him get the driving strike, but in comes Variety. Good ultimate lowers down Benji's health bar, but Cyclone Spin gets the first kill. Now he's all alone in the back, though, and gonna need some peel. Ends up getting the double kill before he falls, but Barracuda will claim the life So they're still probably good for Renegades. They got the tier 2, but Radiance get some response kills on the back.
Radiance, effectively all they do there is trade out Cyclospin's life for the entirety of Renegade's opportunity to move in towards this Primal Fury, but it seems like they're still willing to take this engagement. It's going to be a 3 versus 4 if Benji decides to rotate through, and if Benji doesn't decide to rotate through, it means that he can very easily just take out a tier 1 tower and mid himself, but it seems like the Renegades want to fight here.
Or maybe Radiance, they're starting up the Fury. Renegades move in, and there goes adapting into the back line. Knows that Venenu low on mana, but what happened to adapting? Takes too much damage and ends up falling to Jake in the back line, though Tings does manage to flatten the Aphrodite in the other direction. So Barracuda now making his way into the fray. Aurora taking too much damage as well. Has to reposition. Aggression from Barra, using the Bifrost to move in. Meanwhile, the rest of Radiance are backing, trusting Aurora to make his way out of here. This is odd. It's the only way I can think of it. They did nothing for like an 8-minute stretch, then a big fight in mid, they lose the tier 2, and now Renegades are chasing even more. They finally elect to go back for the objective, the Primal Fury, but it's been fighting and fighting so far.
It feels like it's Renegades' draft kind of working inadvertently as we see Cyclone Spin go up to the air looking for the steal, does get reset momentarily.
And Renegades control the Primal Fury. It goes to them. Now Radiance, though, with 4 members here, might want to roll in a bit more. Cyclone Spin does, and that's damage on Tabera. Benji trying to make good on it as Barracuda falls. Some crits now starting to come through. Aurora chasing Variety, has the pull into the push, but who can follow up? Only Benji nearby, so Variety makes it out. Radiance get a pick on Tabera, but they've given up the Primal. This one's still slightly favoring Renegades, I suppose, but it's Radiance with the very slight gold lead.
Yeah, favoring Renegades on map state, but maybe not inside of Slashline's golden XP. But it feels like, for me, Renegades' draft is working out inadvertently, almost on accident. Sometimes they're getting caught out by Aurora, and just the healing from Ben allows them to regroup as 5. And then all of a sudden, Radiance thinks they're in a good fight. But because Renegades were able to survive so long, all of a sudden that death ball naturally forms as people rotate in to peel out for their team. I like it that the Renegades are able to take these fights to Radiance and win them, but it's not clean, is it? It's not clean from either team.
All right, we're starting up the Fire Giant. Radiance want to do it. No Aegis available for Barracuda, maybe is the idea, as into the backline goes Variety. Tings ultimate allows him to reposition. Benji, the only member forward, so Radiance give up on the FG. 2 ultimates out from Renegades, 1 from Radiance.
Clean play from Renegades to buy the time for Barracuda to not only respawn, but rotate through as well. And now they have the defensive positioning around the Fire Giant, but it's not going to be easy if they want to pull it themselves. Benji's hovering around, the rest of Radiance is already reset, and that burn is very slow. The really only source of consistent damage on these objectives is going to be Barracuda.
All right, so we're going to take a little bit of a breather here in this one, and Meph, I think I got to agree with you. Not exactly the cleanest from either team across this last 6 minutes or so that we've been watching, and it's resulted in a very even game state. No beads or tings, though. That is very important for Renegades. I'm sure they've got that timer. Aegis is about to come back up for Venenu and Barracuda. They'll have the Undying Love. Renegades might have the edge here in this next one if Radiance aren't careful.
Keep your eyes on Jake, keep your eyes on Aurora. I think that's going to be the first one to die on either team here, because it seems like neither one of them has been able to get into the back line of either team as of yet. It really does come down to this front line fight. If Renegades are able to execute on this conveyor belt, use the Nemesis Assault, the Taolu Assault to shred through the frontliners and turn it around there, that's going to work out. But Jake, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah, Aurora's in Jake's head with that one, huh? Dodges the pluck and pushes him to the squad. Unfortunately, that's twice that Radiance has played better and been punished, as Benji is the one that's low in HP on the back of that fight, and Renegades now just going to try to force down the tier 2 tower in the right lane. Radiance not going to defend. That belongs to Renegades.
That's a smart play. Much easier to take down that tier 2 than move in towards that Fire Giant because of how slow their burn is. Barracuda, being an ADC, will certainly be able to take out these structures, but it's going to be very hard for them to feel confident moving in. And you're right, look at that ward coverage from the Renegades. Anyone steps up on Radiance, everyone on the Renegades is going to know about it. But it looks like a small reset as Variety goes back to base. But look at the inventory of Radiance. No wards except for 1 on Benji. This vision isn't going to change anytime soon.
Well, they would need to find some resets of their own here if they want to get back into contest. And if they back like where they're backing, then Renegades will likely know about it. They've got so many deep wards down there to see. around this same deep harpy that they were pushing in earlier in the game. So a couple resets do come through from Radiant. Cyclone Spin picks up the Sentry and a regular ward. Tings gets one too. They'll be back in and able to contest this vision a bit. Take a look at these items. I'm noticing Adapting only seems to have 4. Maybe he's sitting on some gold in hand here at this point, but not quite at the same point that Lasbra is, with plenty of items finished.
Yeah, Lasbra almost completed build just about. Adapting. It is strange. His build is slightly expensive, going for the Heartseeker and the Erendite. Those are very expensive items, but he is missing out on a lot.
Was that Jake that did all that damage? No, it was back off from Venenu. And boy, did that hurt the backline of Radiance. Benji up to the sky. Aurora, the next member, in trouble. And that means Variety's going to push in. The boulder coming out from lands on several, but Benji gets hit by the ultimate from Lasbra. But Bera's low in the back. Snipes from Cyclone Spin will not land, though. And now Variety trying to push this fight forward. Aurora has the driving strike. And Adapting is in the back line. I don't know if that's the timing he wants. And Radiance have already lost their jungler.
Yeah, Radiance lose their opportunity to fight it out here as well. Not only are they lower health, but they don't have a healer either. Ven getting a lot of value out of this Aphrodite. And now Fire Giant, it's going to be a slow burn, but I don't think there's any world where Radiance feel confident enough to move in. Maybe a potential steal, but even then, not really. Renegades establish a resounding lead at the 28-minute mark, and there's only a couple towers standing between them and the base.
And remember, this Aphrodite was 10th picked, I believe, the last one in the draft, so Radiance didn't get a chance with their picks to counter this sustained comp. It all has to come through from the itemization from the Divine there for Tings, the Brawlers on Benji, and Adapting the Cursed Ankh. Upgraded for Aurora. They're going to need those to shine on this mid-Phoenix defense. And already low in the back is Lasbra, but the mid-Phoenix at half HP too. But Aurora hunts him down with a boulder and makes him pay. Mid-Phoenix falls though, so far so good for Renegade as long as they don't lose anything else. But Aurora walks up, 2-man driving strike again, and that means Renegade's in trouble. There's the pull to bring Barracuda in as well. He gets disrupted from the Bifrost. Finally, he used it to go back to the Phoenix, and he is going to be safe there. But Benji gets the kill onto Jake, and now Ben and Variety are separated from their damage. Adapting goes hunting, looking for Barracuda in the back, and Renegades got mid-Phoenix, but Radiance has punished them well.
But this is not a guaranteed fight for Adapting. It's one where he loses. Shades of Zapman versus Panatop. Barracuda comes out ahead.
That is so huge. Variety gets the kill on the Tings as well, and Renegades averting disaster at the tail end as Radiance cannot convert on their favorable positioning. Now, it still works. It ends up being a 4-for-2, but Renegades got the middle Phoenix. That means they're still in control at this point with that Phoenix down.
That is an insane sequence there, and every single bit of damage, every single bit of credit we're going to give to Radiance falls cleanly in Cyclone Spin's lap. He did potentially 80% of the damage output that Radiance had there is solely from their Hunter. These crits are ringing true. He's finding auto attacks. He's positioning perfectly around these fights to consistently be involved. Fantastic play from the ROM. Adapting, unfortunately, twice in a row now falls for very low value, not a part of the core fight for Radiance, and just kind of falls 1v1 to Barracuda on the tail end. But Renegades do strip away a Phoenix, but they lose out on so many of their Fire Giants. Barracuda, the only one still with it. I don't think Renegades are going to be able to do anything for the next two and a half minutes while they wait for this Fire Giant to respawn. This lead is largely lost.
It is. We might just be in stall mode here at this point. If your Radiance is not stall mode, though, you got to keep this mid-wave pushed up while we wait on this Fire Giant to respawn. But I'm not going to be too hard at Adapting. I don't know how you feel. It's hard to fight Hunters in the late game, even on someone like a Wheelish who's strong in the 1v1. He couldn't quite close the gap on Bera, I think, and Bera got the punish. So we'll see how this next fight goes. Renegades have done a really good job, I've thought, of spreading Radiance out here a little bit. They're not giving them quite the team fight that Radiance won.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like Radiance are looking for this pick potential, but Renegades have done a very good job post 25 minutes of maintaining this 5-man group. But, you know, I'll blame Adapting for it. He doesn't have to take that 1v1. He can just hang out and keep poking Barracuda and make sure he doesn't go back to base, wait for your team to reset, because Radiance isn't going to be able to do much with that push anyway. But instead, he does try to make that hero play and loses out on his life pretty easily, if I could say so myself. But, you know, we've got the spectator view. We can't really put ourselves in the exact same shoes of these players, so it's tough.
I see where I'm having the disconnect, though. I'm stopping one step too soon. Yeah, it's a bad fight. You have no hope of winning, but as you point out, then why take it, right? So, got to make sure I'm dotting my I's on that one. No need to walk into an unwinnable fight. I'm seeing the lines of code there, Myth, as Radiance are still trying to keep this mid-wave pushed up. It's kind of gotten close, adapting the one that's working on it now. Meanwhile, Cyclone's been pushing up left, and Aurora just holding on for dear life here in right. We're still a minute away from FG spawning, though, so probably no big action until then, as Renegades are going to look around in the jungle for any picks they can find. Jake, Blink plucking, and there's Barracuda finding the ultimate, so they know where Aurora will land, but can they afford to complete the job? Looks like no. Aurora makes it out safely with some help from the squad.
May have been a straight-up misplay to use the Heimdall ult there. Only just removes Aurora from the playfield long enough for the rest of Radiance to move in and peel them out. And maybe they would have had the damage had they just dedicated some auto attacks. It was a 4 versus 1 situation, but they are able to get at least a couple of things there. There's some positional advantage, some deep wards, but they do lose out on that layer of survivability on this Heimdall. Now he's going to play a lot safer around this 5 versus 5, and Mid Phoenix already respawned, only one more Fire Minion wave leaking down mid. Radiance, they're in a pretty good spot if they do want to put up a defense around Fire.
I think you bring up a good point about Heimdall, though. There have been several times where I've thought you've given your opponent an Aegis more than you've done anything else, right? They're just out of combat for a while their team has time to reconvene. So it really depends on the situation. Heimdall, I think, has a lot of different interesting ways in which you could use all of his abilities. The Bifrost, we've now seen teams using it to be aggressive, repositioning and going back in to complete kills. There's a lot of nuance to the way you play him, I think.
There is, and I think Barracuda has a pretty firm grasp of it as well. He's been using that ultimate largely consistently. But we're moving now into the Fire Giant. It's just respawn. Renegades have the defensive positioning around it. But by nature of Renegades' draft, they cannot take a 50-50. There is no 50-50 scenario for Renegades. If it falls low and Radiance is there, Radiance should be able to out-confirm them every single time. The highest damage output ability that Renegades has is back off. That's not water cannon. That's not even water spout, not to mention crushing wave. So there's so much steal potential for Radiance that Renegades have to commit themselves to the fight. They have to use this conveyor belt strategy. Find a pluck with Awesome Jake, find a pick, and then move into the Fire Giant. And even then, I don't think Radiance would give up the objective. They would try and defend it 4 versus 5. Because if that Fire Giant goes down, the siege potential that Renegades has is very high.
You're right, man. Radiance, I think, are going to struggle if it's a long, drawn-out fight like that, but they'll take it to make sure they don't give up that objective. It feels as though Radiance have to win kind of all at once while this Cursed Ankh is active. As Renegades move forward, Aurora finds the pluck. That's Jake, but Jake lives through it pretty easily. Then he gets the beads out from Adapting, who cannot do much in this late game. When was the last time we saw him get a good pull? Never has it resulted in the kill for him. He's 0-4-4. Radiant struggling to make it work as Jake gets the beads out for free. And you're right, Adapting also last in damage. Not a good game from him.
It really is, and we need to see more out of him. He's got the one-shot build. Heartseeker, Hi-Rez. If he hits someone first, they should die. He's just been having a really hard time finding his way into the backline with this pick or into draft. When Renegades is grouped up as 5 as they have been, who are your best targets? It's really only Barracuda, and even then, we've seen what happens when you isolate Adapting and Barracuda together. It ain't pretty.
Aurora's been plucked in, some CC there, driving strike into the wall, but he lives carefree anyway. Mitigate moves might keep him topped up a little bit later on, but Renegades are pushing back in. Still no Thorns or Blink for Jake, still no beads for Adapting, and no beads for Cyclone Spin either. Jake is hunting for relics, and he's been getting them so far. Into the backline, though, goes Variety. He finds the stun onto Benji, and Benji can't make it into the sky in time. Tough when you die with Somersault Cloud still up, and that's what happened there to Radiance. Renegades do a good job target swapping and punishing the solo lane.
Gravity Surge connects with Variety, and he walks out of that situation. Can't have that happen. You need to commit some more. You have to get that return kill. Had Crushing Wave come through, Variety would no longer draw breath, but now Renegades, great position for the Fire.
They've got it low. Aurora drops the Cursed Ankh and pulls them out of the Fire Giant. This is about the fight instead, and Aurora is in no man's land alone. Now the backup comes. Cyclone's been sniping, and Manenu falls. That's the healing removed. What a pick. Tings takes care of Variety as well, and somehow Radiance have pulled this back from the brink. Jake falls to Big Man Tings. It's a double kill, and Barracuda is in the wrong spot. Triple kill for Big Man Tings as Radiance find a way to somehow win that fight.
Amazing play there.
Nuts.
Renegades a little bit non-committal on the Fire Giant. They all reset, leaving Ben alone in the pit right as the Fire Giant does that 5-ball attack. I'm sure it's got a name that chat's blowing me up for not knowing. And all of them land home onto Aphrodite. She has to walk through the fire wall as well. She essentially loses 80% of her health bar to the objective. And then from there, Cyclone Spin goes up in the air, finishes her off. And that's the game. That's the fight, rather, in favor of Radiance. From there, it's all free money, free real estate as they dismantle Renegades' trap. And that's exactly what we were worried about. When you lose one of the integral pieces of this 5-man death ball, all of a sudden, it's not a death ball anymore. It's just a normal ball, a yarn ball that Radiance dismantle easily.
That is way less threatening, huh? A yarn ball as opposed to the death ball. And we just saw it firsthand as Radiance, without Benji, 4v5. With a little bit of incidental damage onto Venenu, Cyclone Spin was ready to capitalize, and they win that fight. I thought it was a disaster, man. Once Benji got picked and Aurora was up there alone, but Renegades couldn't decide, or they did decide on the fight instead of taking that push onto the Fire Giant, and they end up punished for it, absolutely. A little bit of a delay on that Oni Fear. I think they wanted the spawn of the minion waves, then the Oni on the next wave so they can push with it.
I think so too, but now we get to talk about Radiance's siege potential, and it's gonna be hard. It's not easy for them to get through this iron wall of Renegades. I've loved quoting you on this, Vince. The game simplifies once you're on the defense into a 5 versus 5, and what is Renegades' draft best at? Exactly that 5-on-5 engagement, whereas Radiance, they still are a pick-centric comp. Gonna be much harder for these gravity surges to get a lot of value, but look at this grouping from Renegades. Maybe trying to pick up a Phoenix while Radiance works their way down the duo side of the map, but they get spotted out and decide that defense might be a bit more of an apt play for them. I think Radiance have to commit wholly onto Ven. If they're able to kill this Aphrodite, they win the fight. We got Exhibit A, example number 1 in the last fight. You gotta rework that and run it back.
Yeah, and I don't need example B, C, 2, or 3. That was enough for me, man. They need Ven. It's become crystal clear to me as the mid-tier 2 falls. And Radiance now have a bit of a gold lead, but 38 minutes into it, I'm not sure that it amounts to much. Adapting did get about 3k damage in that last fight as Benji gets plucked in, down to half HP. He does not have teleport, remember, so no 3-second life, as Aurora takes a bunch of damage under the mid-Phoenix. Jake's now looking for a chance to find a pluck, ends up hitting a minion on his way out, doesn't matter much, as left side Phoenix is low.
I like that ultimate call from Aurora there. He doesn't do it for damage. He doesn't do it to clear the wave. He's worried that Awesome Jake is going to go for the pluck onto him, immediately dropping it. And had Jake gone for that pluck, Aurora would have got a free punch. And an out-of-position Sobek is a dead one this late in the game. Unfortunately for Radiance, it doesn't pan out that way. But that left side Phoenix, it's worse for wear.
We gave Adapting a hard time for his damage, but Lasber ain't doing much better, huh? Both junglers pretty silent here in this game as left side Phoenix goes down. Benji's in the backline trying to deal with Lasbra, makes his way back through middle Phoenix though, towards safety as the rest of Radiance move in, except for Adapting. My man's taking care of some Harpies in the back, I believe, as the rest of Radiance look for the fight. Adapting makes it back in, and mid-Phoenix down to half HP, just about. Radiance, though, going to push back in without a minion wave or the first one in. Pluck lands on the Cyclone Spin beads, though. And what was it Rapper said? Pluck onto someone with beads. You're trading your life for that relic.
And he got the beads. I'm not sure it's worth it when the margins are so thin this late into the game. Now,
but he
Radiance,
got him.
Yeah, he got him. Radiance can move into this Phoenix very easily, and it seems like that's the call.
Variety on the backline, though, deletes Adapting. Radiance hasn't needed him much, though. Let's see if they need him here. Barracuda's ult lands, but Venenu low. Just barely not able to complete the kill as Benji, and he pays for it with his life. But the mid-Phoenix comes down. Radiance going to have to retreat, getting exactly what they came for.
Fantastic play from Variety there to shut down Adapting, making sure that Radiance can't do any more than just that, taking out that mid-Phoenix. But 2 Phoenixes down is the biggest map differential we've seen between these two teams. Renegade's only ever taken down the mid-Phoenix of Radiance. Radiance, on the other hand, gets the most important Phoenix in the game, the duo lane Phoenix, making it much harder to defend subsequent Fire Giants, respawning in about 1 minute. That's going to come into play in a big way. Renegades, though, still do have the added benefit, 40 minutes into the game, of having this superior late game team fight draft. It's just whether or not they're going to be able to have that opportunity to utilize it if Radiance has split up the map enough. And someone's going to have to stop these fireman waves. Who's Renegade's going to send? It's likely going to be Guan Yu.
Look at Aurora's KDA real quick, though. He is least deaths tied with Cyclone Spin, a part of the most kills with 15, and just getting it done on this Hercules. He and Cyclone Spin have kind of been it, as far as I'm concerned, here for Radiance this game, man. They're keeping him in it. I think Tings had a good fight on that fire, but it starts with Cyclone Spin killing out Beninu. Radiance need this duo lane to show up the way they've been showing up so far this game.
And just to further emphasize that last fight around fire, Cyclone Spin had to hit all 3 shots of his ultimate. That's not easy. That's not easy on someone who is actively trying to juke you, who is also healing, who's also an Aphrodite. I mean, that is a thin margin that he wins out an engagement for his team for. You can't rely on that every single time, so you're absolutely right to give the props there. And Renegades had to make a hard decision. Do we defend fire or the base? And they choose the base. It's going to be an enhanced fire giant going the way of Radiance.
Do you think they realistically can come contest, or could have contested this FG here, or is that the right call to defend base?
I think they have to remain grouped as 5 at all times, and with the minions pushed up as they were, Renegades likely do make the right call, trying to create a little bit of space. But look how slow this back is, and look how slow the rotation from Radiance is as well. Had Radiance moved into that right side Phoenix with that slow-tation from Renegades, it would have gone down for free.
Right, I mean, Aurora knew, right? He walked right in, he didn't have anyone with him as Jake goes in, adapting low on the left, fighting Laspra, as Jake gets destroyed by the damage of Cyclone Spin. But hey, in the battle of ineffective junglers, I guess Laspra's better, but Tings flattens 2 with the crushing wave. Barracuda in the backline needs some help, does make it into the Bifrost, but that leaves the front line all alone without any damage. Variety is toast. Laspra and Barracuda gotta defend this base alone.
Big man Ting says, "You better say my name, casters. Watch Cyclone Spin's name out of your mouth. It's time for Tings." Yeah, Hebo time. Hits 2 with the crushing wave to turn around a fight handily. Lazar wins the 1v1. Who cares? Adapting's not doing anything anyway.
That's right. What a waste of time. My man Adapting's been a non-factor, and Radiance are taking down the Titan half HP, and there's nothing Barracuda can do. That's a deicide. That's the set. Radiance finding the 2-0.
Fantastic play from Radiance, bringing back that aggressive style, but still showing that they're capable of playing in the late game as well. A 2-0 convincing manner. I thought for sure Renegades was going to win that game as they came into that last Fire Giant. And then that turnaround fight from Cyclone Spin. Individual plays do not often win you games, but this is certainly one of them. Individual plays from Radiance absolutely turn it around.
Just such an impressive way for Radiance to turn this one around. Being done by that core, right? Like Cyclone Spin, Aurora, and Tings making their names heard. What a win for them. They find the 2-0. We got plenty to break down, though, on the other side of this break.
This one's a little bit longer, but the outcome is the same. Radiant's able to get this one done over the Renegades. Really mid-support and ADC for Radiance, where the big numbers going into this one. A win is a win at the end of the day, no matter how long it took you to get there. Aggro, how did they get there, though? I mean, I think BMT, Aurora, and Cyclone Spin had themselves a game and really got Radiance over the finish line and into the win column again.
Agreed. It was really the duo lane for Radiance that really got this one started, and Cyclone and Aurora were absolutely phenomenal come team fight time. It wasn't the duo lane in the actual duo lane. It was only whenever they started rotating and doing fights, but in those fights, Aurora and Cyclone were unbelievable. How does a combined 13-2 and 24 sound to you? Pretty good, I would say.
Better than 1 and 9.
Duo lane there for Radiance, and then 8-2 and 11 as well, coming out of Big Man Tings. And all of this kind of overshadows the great game that Barracuda had on this Heimdall. I mean, he was pumping out tons of damage, absolutely finessed adapting in the 1v1, near adapting zone base, and it just didn't end up mattering. Another game, at least this time, Lasbra had a buddy down there with him near the bottom of the player damage charts. He and adapting were kind of non-factors throughout the majority of this game. It was kind of a 4-on-4 drill, it felt like at times, but at the end of the day, Radiance's was a little bit stronger.
Agreed. It's funny, we come into the set sort of joking, we do the whole chair bit with Ramsey, talking about the junglers, how, you know, jungle tends to be the role that has the potential to have the most impact on some of these games, but I think a tough day for both of the junglers, but Adapting's day definitely eased a little bit with the W in the win-loss column there for sure. And on the other side of Barracuda, we talked about the Heimdall, definitely had a great game there. Cyclone Spin on this ROM, I think, proving why it's worthwhile for some of these teams to be picking this ROM first overall. A 13.5 KDA is always going to be beneficial if you can lock that in with your first pick.
You're not hurting with one of those for sure. I mean, it was just really good backline work by Radiance. And really, I don't think that Renegade's backline, which has at times looked outmatched in games like this, I didn't feel like it really was. I thought both Ven and Barra had pretty solid performances.
Oh.
That ultimate from Big Man is just disgusting, man. You gotta love to see that.
Seems good.
But I really don't feel like the backline for Renegade got outperformed. I thought that their front line is where they lacked a little bit in this game, and that's where Aurora and Benji and Adapting really ended up making a difference in this one. They created space, and Big Man and Cyclone were able to make great work with it.
Aggro, you're always rolling the dice when you're giving Aurora Hercules once in a set. You know, you give it to him twice here. You're playing with fire or something worse for sure. Aurora definitely had himself a set, as the rest of Radiance did. Aurora and Finch standing by for the post-game interview.
Thanks, Dave. I absolutely am here with Aurora. Aurora, I just get to see you on a personal level, bud. How are you doing after that game? And getting to play Hercules twice, I'll pick up right where Dolson left off. That doesn't happen much for you anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm doing good, but did you guys see what happened at the end of that game? I've never seen that in my life. Big Man literally one-shot Aphrodite
What?
from 100%.
Yes!
I've never
so
seen that
right.
ever.
What?
It was actually the craziest thing. I literally had front row seats to it. He literally blinks in and ults him. He literally 100-0'd him a straight one-shot. I've never seen that ever, like in an actual SPL game, I feel like. That was insane.
Well, let's talk about your backline then, because Big Man teams made that hero play, but I think the biggest play of the game is Cyclone Spin getting those snipes onto Ven in that Fire Giant fight. That felt like the turning point for you guys, where you got some momentum, and he just had a lights-out set in general. Talk to me about Cyclone Spin's impact for you guys.
Yeah, no, Cyclone played extremely well. He's just like, keep me alive and I'll kill all of them, and that's what he does every game, so that's what we did.
When you hear that from your ADC, you know it's going to be a good game. Yeah, go back to game one if you can for me. That turning point in that game was the Fire Giant call. Who made that one for you all, where they went gold and you said, okay, we're just going to take the FG then?
Yeah, we were backing and we knew gold was coming up, and Big Man's like, let's just go to Fire. And we all listened to him right away and just got it. So Big Man made a really good call.
Yeah, they never even came over to contest on that one. It came to you basically for free. Well, you guys had kind of a tough phase, it felt like this time, but it's starting to seem you guys are back on track. I think this is 3 wins in a row for you all now. Do you feel like you got things clicking, or do you feel like you still need to see more?
We'll see. I feel like we're getting a lot better, and I think that's the only thing that matters right now.
Yeah.
We got what 2 sets left before playoffs, then Worlds, so we're just trying to get better. I feel like we're getting better. That break we had was kind of rough, but I feel like we're starting to get back into it now a little bit more. But I don't know. We'll see. But I'm feeling good, and we're definitely getting better.
Yeah, I think so too, man. It's just good to see you guys winning again. Thanks for talking to me, Aurora. We'll get it back over to the desk, though. Let them close it out.
Thanks.
Radiants do have 2 final sets in this phase of the SPL. SSG tomorrow, and then Ghost on Halloween. Yeesh. So that is a tough duo to be going up against. Yeah, I'm right with you there on that one, Aggro. I'm glad Aurora pointed out the one shot on the Aphrodite. We kind of laughed about it, but just to vocalize that, I admittedly have never seen that either. That is
one ability is pretty rare. I think I've legitimately one-shot someone with Scylla ult before. I don't think I've ever done it with Hebo ult. Most of the time you see like one-shots, it's 2 abilities hitting at the same time. You know, it's a Lassus combo with Raw, like 1-4 someone, or like a Poseidon Whirlpool Kraken. You don't see true, honest to goodness one-shots that often. But hey guys, listen, Hebo and mages in general are super balanced. In fact, they're actually kind of bad. So here's my list of ways that we can buff them. Production, this is where you just take schedule and don't let... Yeah, perfect. Go ahead, Dave. Cut me off. So number 1... Okay.
No, look, yeah, tomorrow... Well, the problem is I'm with you. I honestly want to let you go a little bit and see where we go here. Radiance versus SSG, the first of the final 2 matchups I mentioned will be tomorrow, so that one's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then PK up against United. PK dropped the set against Sanguine early on here in this weekend, and then Ghost Sanguine sandwiched right in between those 2. Aggro, I think tomorrow it's a 3-set day of the SPL, if that isn't already obvious. Let me vocalize it to you. We're starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow instead of 3 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. That has the potential to be a longer day. These teams not only close-knit in the standings, but I think play as of late trending to be close for some of these squads.
Agreed. Everyone is starting to play with a little bit more gusto, I would say. Everyone understands the stakes that are put in front of them at this point, and some teams are really starting to pop off because of it. Others maybe not crumbling under the pressure, but not matching that same level of step up that you're seeing from teams like, I don't know, PK and Ghost, who have looked pretty phenomenal as of late. I know PK took a loss earlier on this week, a pretty important set for them tomorrow in terms of their own standings, but also for E United now. With this Renegades loss, E United, if they can beat Renegades next week and then win one of their next 2 sets that are against PK and SSG, so 2 tough ones, E United's going to be in a good spot for 6 seed.
Don't you love it? We come sort of to the end of the phase, and there's all these specific scenarios that work themselves out. It just bumps up that intrigue just a little bit extra as far as final standings, going into the Phase 2 playoffs, all that sort of fun stuff. That is it, though, for this Saturday in the SPL. Everyone stick around, though, if you want more competitive SMITE action. We got the SCC still carrying over throughout the rest of the evening. Remember, tomorrow a triple header, PK versus E United, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You can watch the SCC beforehand if you'd like, but 1 p.m. Eastern Time is when we will start off with the SPL tomorrow. As always, thanks for watching. On behalf of myself, Agra, all the other casters, everyone back in production, we'll see you tomorrow.
Peach it.
Everybody, we're getting to the end of 2020, thank God, and that means we are almost at election time. Now more than ever, it's important for everyone to get out, exercise their right to vote, make an impact on your local community and at the countrywide scale. So make sure November 3rd or earlier, if able, you get out and vote.
Go vote.
Go vote.
Canadian, by the way, but understanding that elections are important and obviously you still need to vote. We literally just say the word vote.
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 Go vote.
Yeah, I'm gonna say vote also.
Go vote.
What are you still doing here? Go vote.
Hey guys, make sure you go out and vote.
Hey guys, remember to go vote.
And remember to vote.
Vote.
Go vote or I'll kick your ass.
Hey guys, remember to go vote.
Well, I know at times your vote can seem elusive, but it is indeed your right to vote. Make sure that you're paying attention. Get out there and vote.
What the f does everyone want with me, man? Jesus Christ.